And where are we? Are we streaming? Yes, we are. We're streaming away. We're streaming today. Just me and my little pug. Here. He's gonna hate this. He's gonna hate this. But he's gonna be part of the song today. It's me and Milo, my little friend, who we all adore. Mwah, mwah, mwah. That's a good little boy, buddy. Thanks so much for tolerating that, buddy. You're a good boy. How you guys doing today? Oh, man. Hot, blazing hot day today. I woke up with, like, a little bit of a headache today, you know what I mean? Like, just, like, nothing major, like, nothing debilitating, but just, like, this little sort of pernicious, like, there it is, I feel it, there it is, right? And I think it's just I'm not drinking enough water, honestly. Just not drinking enough water today. Oh, goodness me. So make sure you're drinking lots of water. Make sure you're drinking lots of water today. It's like deceptively hot, right? Like I feel like I went outside and it was just like, sure the sun but like it's this present humidity. It's like this present humidity. Anyway, this is you're not tuning in for the weather. So here's a couple of the things that I found. New Abacus data report coming out. The Liberals, of course, are ahead still, but this was how would you vote tomorrow, right? Like, that's the question. What I think is interesting is that largely you see here, Liberal support has mainly plateaued, right? And it's always been this way. Like, you go back, like this is the data going all the way back to August of 2020. And like 36 and it dips down, maybe the 33 goes up to 38. And so like the average really is about 34%, 35% across the line. And it seems like it hasn't really altered that much. Compare that to what's going on with the Conservatives. So we're sitting at 31, 32, but now they've got recently these big dips downward. I don't really understand why they had a big jump up here, 32%, but now they're back down 27%. And in the meanwhile, the NDP seem to be on something of an opposite trajectory, right? Like that they have this kind of plateau, and then they've got recent spike ups. Now, it's completely possible that this data is just like an up and then another down. Like we had an up here and then another down, or an up here and then another down, right? Completely possible. But I think that this is good news. By and large, for the NDP going into this election. We will see what happens when the election actually gets called, but I feel like this is not a terrible place for the NDP to be sitting going into this election. I feel like the Liberals are feeling stable, probably not overwhelmingly confident, probably not overwhelmingly powerful in this position. If I'm the Conservatives, it's like ring the bells. Like I feel like you had to be ringing the bells like way back here, right? Like this polling data, and especially like I feel like you have to be completely detached from reality at this point. Hey Ruth, how you doing today? Glad to have you. You're the first one in the chat. It looks like I'm just talking about the new Abacus data polling that came out. How would you vote tomorrow? And this puts the Liberals in like minority/majority territory, right? Like they can win a majority with this kind of percentage. But if the Conservatives continue this decline, like if this decline goes down even to 25%, that is very bad news for them. Meanwhile, the NDP is starting to strike up at 20%. So, yeah, throw them all out, start from scratch. Good luck with that, Ruth. Good luck with that. Isn't that what we're trying to organize right here? Isn't that what we're doing right here? You and me, Ruth. We're going to do it. We're going to get a big coalition of people together, right? And we'll call it the Throw the Bums Out Party. What do you think? And we'll all get together, and we'll just throw everybody out and rewrite our Constitution, right, from the ground up. I actually think our the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, our Constitution is relatively decent. I wouldn't mind if we added food and shelter as like an economic right. Right? People should have economic rights, and one of those economic rights should be that everyone gets food and shelter, and that's just part of the deal. You want to be a Canadian? Well, that means that you have food and shelter, and that's a guarantee, and it's built in. It's kind of weird to me, actually, that we have these, like, time for the complainers to do something about it. Well, and there's a reason why, like, the Liberals and the Conservatives can't really get big coalitions, right? Like, these groups that they've created, like these voting blocks that they've created, are very, very small and very, very weak. I feel like it would just take the Canadian populace would just have to kind of wake up for one moment and just be like, these guys are unelectable. Like, and if everybody just like doubled down on even the NDP, but like the Greens, can you imagine if like Ontario started voting for the Bloc? Something ridiculous like that. But like, we just need to scare the shit out of these guys. Like, that's really where we're at. If we wanted to be honest about how this politics thing actually moves forward, we genuinely just need to scare the shit out of these guys. And I'm of the opinion that if everybody piled into the NDP and just started voting NDP, that would be enough to scare the shit out of these guys. Because like, I don't know if the Conservatives are going to survive it. This election might be the election that like the Conservatives have broken up before. They turned into the Conservatives and then the Reform Party, right? And they had big breakups, and that's already happening with the People's Party of Canada. And if that occurs, then we're talking. Then politics in Canada becomes like a real race, because a fractured right wing with even a modestly organized NDP on the left, yeah, I would have thought after a year of this, the questions would be obvious. Yeah, I just think people are like heads into the sand, right? Heads in the sand. They can't. You can't focus on politics, right? Like, you can't focus on politics. You're just trying to live your life. You're just trying to live your life day by day. Make it all happen, right? And I know that, like, lots and lots of people, like, I was just talking about the heat, the hot weather. I've noticed it in my channel. There's been a decline. And this is the first time that I'm, like, doing live streaming over the summer, so I like, everybody's going outside enjoying the nice weather, trying to live their lives, right? Nobody's spending time actually dealing with politics and dealing with the news or dealing with any of this, because it's catastrophic and requires so much energy to focus on. So this is the long form way of me saying, I think that things are set up nicely to go into an election, and I think the NDP have a lot of gains to make. I don't think the Liberals can make any more gains, right? I don't think the Liberals can get better than this. So this is as good as it gets for the Liberals. That for both the Conservatives and the Liberals, it's all downhill from here. That if the Liberals start to climb up, it'll be like a real, like, I'll be talking about how impressive that is for decades. Like, if the Liberals can continue gaining and continue growing from this place, and if they get up into like 40-50% territory for voter intention, and they end up winning a majority government, that's a very impressive feat. It's and worth analysis and worth talking about for decades. So I genuinely think that that the NDP are the ones who are the most positioned to make the largest gains, as the Conservatives seem to be in a kind of a free fall collapse. Like, this is horrible. 25% for the Conservatives. That's horrible. Like, I'd be terrified of this if I was the Conservatives right now. Did you hear about Ford's education minister who said, why pay teachers? We'll save money by putting schools on video? Yeah, conservatives have no respect for education. They don't give a shit. Like, for them, it's just like, it's the classic sort of vetting, right? Like, if a kid is willing to sit in front of a computer screen and do what he's told, and the kids that come out of that process will be the most obedient, brainwashed kids that can come out of a school system, and that's exactly what the capitalist class wants. They don't want free-thinking, capable, critical thinking people. Like, they want obedient workers. That's what they want. And yeah, you can't enslave educated people, right? And you can't enslave people who insist that they have rights, right? You can't enslave people who insist that they are people who have the right to be educated in the first place, right? So, and this, honestly, there's so many times when I've looked at this Ford government and I've been like, this is the moment. Like, this is it. Like, just look at this moment, and this is the only thing you need to know to know that you need to get rid of these guys. And this is yet another one. Like, the education minister standing up and being like, yeah, just put them in front of videos. Just do like pre-recorded videos and just put them in front of that. Like, yeah, that's literally the only like, circle that, put that in front of people. It's the only thing you need to know that this group of people are unelectable. Like, they cannot continue being in charge of this province. Like, it's embarrassing. Yeah, I mean, the more you learn about humanity, the more you come to realize that it's extremely believable. It's extremely believable. You just got to accept that. You just got to accept that your constituency's like, yeah, hey, Doug Ford, he's going to give us a buck of beer, eh? Oh, a buck of beer. Buck of beer, eh? With low hydro rates? I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll take all the money that I'm going to save from hydro, and I'm just going to buy a whole bunch of beer, and then we'll watch the game with all the beer that we got from the buck of beer, eh? Oh, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, yeah. That's your constituency. Like, they're not smarter than that. Like, that's the deep shame of Canadian politics and the deep reality. And we'll see. I'm looking forward to this election season, man. I'm getting more and more hype for it. I've got a bunch of people telling me that my channel is actually really, really well positioned to grow with a big election season, because I feel like my commentary is going to be, if not unique, well, unique. Yeah, my commentary coming from the communist position is going to be not well proliferated in the corporate media. So I feel like my channel is well positioned to grow through the election season. I'm really looking forward to the liberal ads, man. Aren't you looking forward to the liberal ads? I'm really looking forward to the liberal ads. The conservative ads are going to be so ham-handed and so stupid. They're going to focus on all the dumb stuff. They're going to, like, what do they even focus on? Like, they can't talk about climate change. They can't genuinely talk about, like, what are they even going to talk about, right? So I'm curious to see what the conservatives. I'm also waiting for people waking up to the fake upgrade by the feds to disability payments from the province. You think it's fake, eh? You think it's fake? I've seen that come through, and my position on it is that it's, oh, look, the Liberals tabling a popular bill on the lead up to an election. Oh yeah, they're certainly not going to kibosh that right after the election. They certainly don't have a long history of tabling fake legislation that they have no intention of actually moving forward with. And I am seeing, like, people are still bringing up electoral reform. That's one that still gets brought up. They don't even approve of the tool. I know. Aaron O'Toole, he's unpopular even in his own base. Like, even his own base doesn't like him. Well, and he's screwed both ways, right? Like, the average Canadian looks at him and is like, you're the leader of a climate change denying party that wants to inflict austerity politics against us. And then his own base is like, you said the climate change was real, and you keep talking about how we should care about people who aren't white. Yeah, I think you're right. A September election, I think calling the election, and Canadian, you got to remember, like, we're so inundated and we're so used to the idea that of American politics and how American elections work, which is like it takes like 6 months for the whole election to happen, right? It's like this big long ordeal. In Canada, it's 6 weeks. It's like they call the election, everybody lists their ads, there's a couple of debates, and then the vote happens, right? And there's not that many Canadians. So it's easy to vote. And we don't have the kind of restrictive laws that exist in the United States. So the whole electoral season like doesn't last that long, and then we draw the conclusions. If I was a gambling man, if somebody if somebody said like, okay, you have to spend $500, you got to take this bet, I'm thinking it's going to be another liberal minority. That's what I'm thinking. And if I really wanted to put my money on the table and really be like, okay, like what's it going to look like? I would also bet that the NDP become the new leaders of the opposition. I think that that's possible. And I think that that would be a real interesting improvement and an interesting change to how the House of Parliament is drawn up. But we'll see, man. We'll see. The Canadian electorate is not one thing, right? Like it's an unwieldy beast, and things can get pretty fucky pretty quick. Which is what makes it exciting. Also, we should demand the upgrade before the election this time, or you get nothing from us. Yeah, I mean, but you got to remember, from the Liberal perspective, that's actually like real touch and go. Like Wynne conceded a lot of stuff. She made a lot of concessions on the lead up to the election, right? Like she raised the minimum wage. She was making a lot of concessions, and she ended up losing handily. But I do think that's also because she really waited, right? She really forced people to really, really push on her. Like if the Liberals were talking about this disability payment, if instead of talking about it, they just did it, if instead of just dickering around, they were just like, oh, by the way, we're passing this, right? I think that would solidify a lot of support for them. But I feel like because they work for the capitalist death cult, they're trying to see if just talking about it is enough, right? Like the Liberals don't want to actually do stuff. They want to see if they can get away with just talking about it, right? Like, oh, if we can just talk about it and get in, like, why should we bother doing anything? Anyway, interesting times, and I mean, and the Bloc and the Green Party still floating around, right? I big question marks about the Greens. Yeah, same time as the seniors upgrade, like all of these things, right? Like all of these things. The basic income is another one that they're doing this to. Right? They've got basic income legislation going through the House. And like, I just feel like we gotta scoff at this. Like, oh, weird that you have all of this legislation going through the House that you haven't passed. How long did it take to pass the CERB again? Oh, it took a week? It took you 1 week to pass the CERB. Oh, it's odd that you're taking all this time to pass all of these other things, isn't it? Don't you think it's a bit strange? It took you 2 weeks to pass the CERB. Yeah, here's a great one. Goddamn, water prosecutors just got a hold of documents that indicate that the South Dakota National Guard was authorized to use lethal force to protect pipelines. They were explicitly told to kill people to protect the property of oil companies. Yeah, I mean, like, for God's sakes, like, what's going on here in Toronto with this organization created by Isabella Gamp called POOF? Protect ODSP Ontario Works payments is like, I don't know what to call. What would you even call it? It's a tragedy, certainly. Like the fact that this woman feels that she has to go out onto the street and street corners and is shouting into microphones, into sound systems to blast it into the streets, and is attempting to organize protests to it's a tragedy, and it's completely unnecessary. It's completely unnecessary. And what's so pathetic about this situation is that we know that giving money to the like, we know that things like basic income schemes, right? We know that the basic income actually improves your economy. For every dollar you put in, you get $2 back. We know that from the childcare benefit, right? We know that from the old age pension. We know that from the current disability we have. For every dollar you put in, you get $2 back, right? And that creates and generates more economic activity. But we're not actually living in a moment of rationality, right? We're not using our brains. We're not actually interested in rational thinking. We have this deep-seated money worship ideology that has taken over our society, and everything is about the worship of money, and we've attached to that worship of money the concept of quote unquote hard work, right? That, oh, clearly the people who are getting the money are the people who are working hard, even though that has nothing to do with anything, right? Capitalists don't work. They just take their money and they use their money to make more money while you do the work, right? And hard work doesn't generate money, but we believe it does. So there's this like deep ideology inside of our society that isn't dead yet, even though it needs to be. It needs to be very dead. And we need to understand that money is just a tool, and that giving money to people isn't like there's no ideological purity test. There's nothing there. Like, literally the role of the government is to provide the basic necessities for the populace. And if it's going to do that by handing out money to everyone and then have them interact in a market, right? Well, then so be it, right? And of course, you continue down this line of thought with me, and I'm just like, yeah, that would work a lot better if we just got rid of these capitalists, right? If the parasites were out of the system, right? If we just removed the parasites and removed the parasitic class, and had a market where people actually like sold the stuff that they actually worked to produce. We need to get more on Facebook and make libs and comms look bad, uncaring and thoughtless. We don't need to pay, we need to post everywhere. Yeah, class action lawsuit. Like, at this stage in the game, everything counts. Like, that's something that I've been having like weird conversations with people who seem to think that like a protest isn't going to cut it. Like, we are, I just saw this recently. This is something I want to put up into the ether. This, here, can I open this in a open link? And this I just saw recently. I don't actually know that much about this organization, but it's October Strike. October Strike. Yeah, I don't need to load that up. And it looks like it's just a group of people. I've contacted these people to see if they are interested in coming on my channel and actually talking to me about this. And so we'll see if they come on. But so I've been spreading this around, National General Strike Day, and the pushback that I'm getting is like, oh, this isn't going to work. You know, it's a one-time thing. All this. We need like a big, hard, long scale sort of stuff. And it's like, okay, great, but how do you think that those movements start? How do you think these long scale, large scale movements actually happen? So, and it's stuff like this. I mean, I tend to agree with you, Ruth, that what we need is a rebellion, right? That's what we actually need. We actually need a full scale rebellion. Like, literally stop everything. But I don't know if our society, like, we have stuff like last summer we saw the largest multiracial working class uprising in U.S. history against the prison industrial complex. Then Democrats won the presidency, House, and Senate and are now pushing for funding for more cops. The Democratic Party really is the graveyard of social movements. Like, that's very tough, right? That's very tough. And we really are in a place where what we need to be doing is surrounding the halls of power and forcing them to actually do something. And one of the things that I've been noticing recently, people are really dumping on the Catholic Church, right? And by people, I mean like the media generally. And I think that this is a distractionary tactic. the Catholic, like headlines like the Catholic Church raised nearly $300 million for buildings since promising residential school survivors $25 million in 2005. Like, that's true for sure, but it's a way to funnel attention away from the halls of power, right? Like, the Catholic Church isn't like that important really to how the structure of our society works. The Parliament is. And if we genuinely cared about this issue, like these people that are going after statues, like fundamentally what they're doing is they're going after government property, right? And that is a protest against not only our own past, but also against the government, because it's the government that is maintaining these statues, right? And if I'm responsible for maintaining the status quo, and I see people knocking over these statues, well, I'm gonna do what I can to sort of deflect and be like, oh, it's actually the Catholic Church. You should be focusing on the Catholic Church. Sad but true, and still, unfortunately, better than Trump. I actually completely disagree. I see Trump and Biden as essentially equals. Like, I don't think that Donald Trump and Joe Biden are much different from one another. That the only real difference between Biden and Trump is perception. That Donald Trump, because of his dementia and because of his sort of gleeful desire to get a rise out of people, really enjoyed taking the mask off, right? He really enjoyed, like, revealing more than he should, right? And he really enjoyed making what has always been implicit explicit. He really enjoyed doing that, but that's not a fundamental change in how business works, right? That doesn't fundamentally change how business operates. And like Joe Biden is the only difference is that he's willing to put the mask on and just keep the mask on, right? And just let the people work behind the scenes and let that all happen. Whereas Trump was less willing to do that. But outside of that, like in terms of how the business actually operated, they're fundamentally the same. Unfortunately, people get angry at knocking them over. Yeah, not why. Isn't that it? Yes, people are like, oh, they're knocking over a statue. That's how horrible. I'm like, that I don't get at all, right? Even if didn't Biden cancel Keystone XL? Drew, yes, and that is a fair point to bring up, but I also do think that that's an inevitability anyway, because the writing is sort of on the wall. Here, let's go a little bit deeper into that, because that is a decent conversation point. Keystone XL map. Like, it was pretty unlikely that this was actually going to happen in the first place, right? And also because of the economics of it. Like, sorry, oh, come on. Oh, come on. Should not be this difficult to get a map of the Keystone Pipeline. Okay. So, first and foremost, I think the big thing that's worth talking about is that we know that the tar sands are not going to be a successful project in the future, right? It's extremely, like, this oil is extremely costly to get. Hey Jeff, how you doing, bud? How you doing? It's extremely costly to get this tar sands oil up. It's not like putting a straw in the ground and sucking it up, right? Like, and this whole arrangement of getting, like, the question I keep answering of conservatives and their general confusion, and I respect why they're confused about it, is why can't we refine this ourselves? What's with this? Why is it that we have to take this and like pour it down this pipeline in order to get it down in here? Well, I mean, if you look at the intended so this is the existing pipeline, right? Like, the pipeline already exists. So the Keystone XL project was just to kind of cut it this way and get it over here, right? Well, why? Is this more efficient? Is this better? Is it better to have this pipeline cut down through Montana, through South Dakota, through Nebraska, right? So why is this project even being discussed in the first place, right? Because this pipeline all exists. It's all here, right? They're already doing this, right? And hey, Onward, how you doing? And part of the issue and part of the reason why they wanted to create the XL pilot project, in my view, is because these sections of the pipeline are the sections, like, you're taking this through North Dakota and South Dakota. Well, that means that you're taking it through First Nations land, right? That this is going through lands that are being fought over, right? And they're trying to get around it. But the destruction of the XL pipeline doesn't stop any of this. So Biden comes in, makes a deal, makes it work, and it's all kind of for nothing, right? Like, it's another one of these issues that's like just kind of there to obfuscate the fact that these pipelines already exist. They're already there. They're already funneling. And if you want to have a larger conversation about the tar sands and the future of the tar sands, like, I'm generally of a mind with Tony Seba, like the tar sands are not going to be able to sustain for much longer, because the price of oil is just going to drop. The price of oil is just going to drop, and that's going to mean that it's completely unprofitable to use the tar sands. They're already experiencing this in Alberta. It's already happening. Like, we talk about opening Google Maps, Google Maps, Google Maps, Google Maps. Like, the big shit that happened in Venezuela, it all happened because there was a drop in oil prices, right? And the drop in oil prices occurs because Saudi Arabia begins to increase its production, right? It increases its production by an enormous amount. It's got an enormous amount of oil sitting in barrels. And you got to remember that their oil is literally like put a straw in the ground, out comes the oil, right? So this drops the price of oil, creates a crisis in Venezuela, which then the Americans put a boot on the back of Venezuela and just keep pushing them down through sanctions, right? Well, that affects the tar sands very much as well, right? A dropping oil price means that the Alberta tar sands are also in trouble. And so, to answer your question initially, Drew, like, I mean, you look at this map and it's pretty explicit. Like, this little tiny sliver of pipeline was never really that big of an issue in the first place, right? And in many ways, in my view, it's a way to just sort of throw smoke in your face, because you're standing here putting all of your energy fighting against this building of a pipeline that's not that consequential, while completely ignoring the fact that, oh, well, there's already pipeline already built, right? So as long as you're focusing on imaginary not built projects that aren't very consequential, that means you're not going to the actual pipelines and trying to do anything to actually stop the actual pipelines from continuing their production, right? And this is all for nothing, right? In the end of the day, like, this is all for nothing, because as oil continues to drop, yeah, Venezuela is sanctions hard. They can't refine and sell their oil. Yeah. And the price of oil is like not going to go back up. Like, there's not really, because of what the Saudi Arabians have done, and because of the transfer to solar, because of the transfer to renewable resources, because of this big push. And there is a big push happening to get off of fossil fuels. It is happening. Like, what was an article I read from the Jacobin, if I'm not mistaken, that there was always this narrative that people were saying, oh, you should go and you should just go buy shares in these companies, and then that's how you could affect these companies. And so a bunch of people did. A bunch of people did just that. And so ExxonMobil is experiencing like shareholder like revolts, and people like literally taking over shareholder meetings and being like, we are shareholders. You need to start investing in renewable energy, right? Like, and so this shift is going to happen, and it's not going to happen because of like Biden shutting down this sort of inconsequential project that really at the end of the day just kind of ended up making Kenny look like an asshole, right? which isn't hard to do. Kenny is a giant asshole, but it's kind of being it's a scapegoat. It's a scapegoat. It because Canadians don't really understand the larger picture, the larger meta, and nobody's asking them to, right? But because they don't, well, you need to come up with reasons for why things happen, right? Like why people need, if you're working on the tar sands and your whole job has been the tar sands, it's like, well, why can't we get this oil sold? It's like, it's the Keystone Pipeline. It's like, well, no, that's not really what it is. It's because Saudi Arabia has been overproducing oil by a lot, like an enormous amount. And it's 100% because Saudi Arabia is very aware. Like, Saudi Arabia is building gigantic solar panel fields. Like, Saudi Arabia solar panel fields. Like, back in 2018, right, this planned solar farm in Saudi Arabia would be 100 times bigger than any in the world. And China's already doing stuff like the Tenagar Desert Solar Park, affectionately known as the Great Wall of Solar. Man, China really loves using that Great Wall thing, eh? They use it in terms of their defense. They call their military the Great Wall of Steel, and now they've got the Great Wall of Solar. Right? Larger farms, Westland Solar Park. So it's just like these companies are building and building and building. The Desert Tech Initiative in the Sahara, right? It makes total sense. The Sahara Desert, like deserts are well known for how much sun they get. And so if you just like jam solar into these places, it's going to work, right? And it's like, so you have these enormous high scale projects actually happening everywhere else in the world. We're the ones that are not doing anything, right? Like I watched that Michael Moore presents Something of the Humans, Planet of the Humans, and it did a pretty good job of talking about what's happening in North America, but it did not talk at all about what's happening in the Sahara Desert, what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening in China. It didn't talk about this at all. And there's huge things happening. And so the Saudi Arabians are extremely aware that this shift to solar, this shift to other forms of renewable energy is happening. And what are they doing then? Well, they're saying, okay, well, now's the time to get the oil out of the ground then. Because if we wait and we just kind of keep our production low, then we're going to have all this oil in the ground and it's going to be very expensive to get it up then. So let's get it all up now. I don't give a shit if this tanks the Venezuelan economy. I don't give a shit if this tanks the Alberta tar sands. I don't give a shit about any of that. I'm going to suck this easy to get out of the ground oil and I'm going to sell it as much as I possibly can. I don't give a shit if it tanks the price of oil and that everybody else suffers for it. Who gives a shit? I'm going to turn that into solar panels. I'm going to put in this whole region here. Like somebody was telling me the other day that there's this plan to put a city over here. And I think a big reason they're doing that is so that they can put enormous solar panel fields in here, right? And control the region and have enormous solar going on while we're sitting here with our thumbs up our bum, being like, oh, I wonder what's going on. And so then people then turn around and are like, oh, things aren't happening in the tar sands. What's going on? Keystone. Oh, Biden. Keystone. That's what really mattered. That's what's really happening. So it's just a quick, snappy, really easy to point at kind of thing. And on top of that, it means that you don't need to turn public perception against Saudi Arabia, right? If you turn public perception against Saudi Arabia, well, the reality is that you would much rather have people forget about Saudi Arabia. You don't really want people to know anything about Saudi Arabia. It's very strange, in my view, that people have stronger opinions of China than they do Saudi Arabia, but because Saudi Arabia is our strongest ally in this region, right? That the Canadians and the Americans, their strongest ally in the region is Saudi Arabia. And so we don't want public opinion to turn against Saudi Arabia. We sell weapons to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is absolutely instrumental to our plans in the Middle East. It's absolutely instrumental to maintain the power structure in Saudi Arabia, to maintain the genocide in Yemen, to maintain the genocide in Palestine. These are absolutely crucial acts for us to maintain this relation, and we cannot have public perception turn against Saudi Arabia. And so you definitely don't want to tell conservative voters in the heartland of Alberta, the reason why the tar sands are shutting down and the reason why you're losing your job, the reason why you're going through an economic recession, the reason why everything is actually terrible is because Saudi Arabia is overproducing oil. Nope. Keystone. Biden! Because what are they going to do about that? They're not going to do anything about that. Like, who cares? Like, who cares if a bunch of Albertans think that the United States is a piece of shit? So what? Right? That doesn't matter. Like, public perception is turning against the United States. Oh, okay. Like, that's not a big deal at all. It's because corporations want land, not solar. Just imagine some billionaire doing that on their land. Yeah. Well, and I find that to be very odd. Like, I would think that the billionaires would be very, very interested in creating, like, big, large solar panel type projects. Like, I would think that would be like, because, like, you think about, like, what the future is going to look like. If you're a billionaire, you got to be thinking, like, yeah, like, make these enormous solar panel fields, man. Like, permanent fields that I own that are perpetually generating energy for me. Yeah. Like, I again, this flows into the what I always say about stupid billionaires. The billionaires are actually quite dumb, right? Like, I don't like Tesla. Like, literally, we're in a space race. There's a billionaire space race. Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and now the Virgin Airlines guy, Branson. They're in a space race with each other. What? That's so dumb. Like, that's so dumb. Like, that is literally just little boys with hanging on to their dicks, trying to measure which one's got the biggest dick, right? Literally, they're going to create some kind of finish line. And we all know what that finish line is, right? Which one of us is going to get people onto Mars? That's what the finish line is, right? And they don't care how they have to do it. And once they get that person there, it's like the Christopher Columbus effect, right? They want to be Christopher Columbus. They want to be the guy who is in the history books. That when we're talking and teaching children about, and then people went to Mars, we'll be using their name, right? And everybody forgets and literally that's what they're doing. It's so fucking stupid. Like, it's so fucking stupid. It's embarrassing is what it is. Ugh. So, and this is like the long form way of saying, like, yeah, Biden and Trump, like, Trump would have done something like this. Like, this project was not that important, ultimately. Trump was actually better because he said the quiet part out loud and people were sleeping on politics and he woke them up. Now Biden is in and people are back to sleep. That is exactly right. That is exactly right. Like, yeah, they have so much money, doing something right with it would be crazy. Yeah. Isn't that money supposed to trickle down? I thought the money was supposed to trickle down, you guys. That's what I thought. And billionaires are just naturally good people, aren't they? They're supposed to do good things for us, aren't they? That money's just supposed to trickle down. It'll trickle down. It'll trickle down any moment now. Yeah, after BC's historic heat wave, Canada should double down on building retrofits. Never going to happen. The billionaire class does not make money that way. That is not how the billionaire class makes money. And in fact, the billionaires are actually completely fine with infrastructure collapsing. This is something I've been thinking about a lot recently. Like, Biden has been trying to push through an infrastructure bill that is not going to work and is going to be completely ineffectual because the billionaire class is just going to take the money and offshore it, right? And anything they actually do in the society is not going to stick. Right? So, but, like, say, take Miami. So now there's big talks to actually just knock over a bunch of these buildings. Well, okay, that means you need to pay somebody, right? So you got to pay a company. So the government is going to pay these guys to go knock over a bunch of buildings, right? They're not going to retrofit them. They're not going to try to do any of that. They're just going to knock over a bunch of shit. And then you'll have a bunch of empty land, and maybe some developer will sucker some politician, or bribe, rather, some politician, and let them erect more shitty infrastructure here, right? So, and this is how the capitalists think. The capitalists aren't thinking, how do we make things sustainable? The capitalists aren't thinking, how do we maintain stuff, right? If that were true, they'd be maintaining the power grid in Texas. If that were true, they'd be maintaining the power grid in New York, but they're not, right? So you end up with situations where the mayor of New York is asking his citizens to stop using power while they have Times Square like lit up like a candle, right? And you just have all of these insipid situations going on. And it all ties into sort of the ethos of the North American mindset, which is build bombs, blow up bombs, like blow up places with bombs, right? Continue building bombs to blow up further places, and then go in and rebuild the places you just bombed, and then come back later and then bomb the place that you just built. And that's called an economy, right? That you make money from the government handouts for building the place, and you get money from the government handouts for building the bombs, and then you get money for actually dropping the bombs, right? So if you're embedded in all three, like if you're like Homeland Security, right, which is Cheney, right? Well, you make money from bombing the place, you make money from building the bombs, and you make money from rebuilding it after you bombed it. And not to mention stealing the resources, right? Which is exactly the scam that they're running in Iraq and Syria and all throughout the Middle East. It's exactly the scam. And that scam they're going to bring here, right? They're going to bring to North America, right? So they're not going to like, they're not actually going to like retrofit. They're not going to retrofit shit. There's no money in it. There's no money in retrofitting anything, right? You make money from destroying shit, and then you make money from building shit. You don't make money from retrofitting anything. That's not what capitalists want to do. Capitalists aren't interested in creating sustainable life. So they're not interested in building something that's going to be here for 1,000 years. They don't care about that. They don't care about that at all. They'd much rather just knock these places down and rebuild them. That's much rather what they're looking at. So this is just some like, you might as well be wishing that fairies are real to get this kind of thing. As long as there are capitalists in the discourse, this kind of thing's never going to happen. 6 people injected with saline instead of COVID-19 vaccine. Oh yeah, that's going to happen. Federal egg gag bill fizzles out after committee study. Good. Like, good. It's, how despicable is it that we are being told that we can't actually go into these farms and like film what's happening in these farms? Like, so much for freedom of speech, so much for any of that. Like, and that just convinces me more and more that like the people who are pushing forward this gag legislation, they know what's going on. They know what's happening, right? They know that they're running like these horrific torture centers where they torture animals all day and like debeak chickens. They know that if these pictures get out to the general public, that'll be a major problem for like McDonald's, like an institution that just definitely should not exist. Like, what the fuck is up with this? What the fuck is up with McDonald's, man? Like, McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's and Arby's and all these kinds of places. Like, what the fuck? It's so fucking weird that there's these places that like literally let's clear cut the Amazon so that we can get a fucking cheap burger. Hey Newton Finn, I don't think I've ever seen you in here, bud. Good to see you. Glad to see you. Stick around. Hello, comrades. Finally made it to a live stream. I just got out of a psychotherapy session and I'm all jacked up on anti-capitalist sentiment. Well, good, bud. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for coming in. While you're here, man, make sure you like, share, subscribe. Might as well pitch that into the ether right now. I got a Patreon down below. Welcome. Speaking of Vosh, earlier I saw a video where he was saying we need to stay in the Middle East because China will fill the vacuum. That's dumb. That's really, really, really dumb. Like, honestly, like, that's extremely dumb. Like, China is already filling a vacuum throughout the world, and that vacuum is, hey, let's make this place better. Let's build this place. Let's build, right? And also, like, not to mention, like, that saying that is simply xenophobic, right? Like, it's simple. Like, that statement right there makes me lose all respect for Vosh. That Vosh is strictly an imperialist saying that. That is a defense of imperialism, and while admitting his own illiteracy and ignorance about how China has been operating and what China would do. Can you imagine China actually attempting to simultaneously build its own culture, build up its own people, while attempting to, like let's take a look at its own borders, right? So you're telling me it's going to absorb Afghanistan into the larger body of China, right? That's just not going to happen. And it's an incredibly illiterate thing to say, because one of the things that has been pointed out about China is that China considers itself to be like a civilization, right? That it's not interested in building like an empire. It's not interested in building like this imperialist view. It's a civilization. It's one people, which is why people who say of China that it's going to balkanize, like, that's stupid. China considers itself one people, right? That it is like, we are all Chinese. And sure, you have like minority groups and stuff and all that kind of stuff in it, but even those minority groups largely say that they're part of the larger body of China. And so China doesn't have, like, and you compare this, and so because of this, China doesn't have this attitude of like, we need to spread Chinaism. Like, it doesn't have this attitude of spreading its ideology or making other people conform to its ideology. Like, China's position is, what? We're China. Things are nice here, right? Why would we go and do any kind of adventurism? This is the best place on the planet, right? The Chinese are saying, this place is great. Why do we want to bother spreading it around? Like, we are China. Whereas the United States perspective is, the United States is the greatest in the world and everybody else needs to be like us, right? Because the United States is fundamentally white supremacist, right? And if you're a white supremacist, then you want to destroy everything that isn't white and isn't white culture, right? You want to kind of cleanse the world of this and rebuild it in your own image, which is extremely childish, right? And so when Vosh says stuff, when anybody says stuff like, well, if the United States leaves, China will come and just like fill this vacuum, that's stupid. Like, that's stupid. Like, what China's actually going to do is what they've been doing already, which is building trade relations, allowing people to develop on their own, helping African nations develop, build ports, this sort of thing. Like, there's no, that's not a leftist position. Like, that's embarrassing, is what that is. Like, I can't imagine a more embarrassing thing to say. Like, you are illiterate if you're saying that, and you mean it. Like, China's not going to come in, like, no, China is busy building, like, the Belt and Road Initiative. It's busy building major cities. It's busy trying to convert its deserts into habitable land. It's busy with terraforming and infrastructure and internal work. It's busy looking at itself and constantly reforming and changing itself in order to improve its own situation. And you're telling me that suddenly the Americans are leaving the Middle East, and so it's going to completely abandon that and completely pivot away from that, and instead it's going to plow into this disaster? This disaster. You think that China is legitimately just going to show up and be like, hey, I'm the ruler now in this nightmare disaster scenario? Nah, brah. Like, nah. The Chinese are looking at that and being like, yeah, you guys need to fucking work that shit out. Like, you need to work that shit out. And it's gonna let that happen. It's not gonna get involved in that, man. Like, after the Americans are done destroying this region, and after the American economy collapses and they have to recede militarily, as is already happening, incidentally, what do you think the Afghanistan retreat actually is, right? It's a withdrawal because they're running out of resources. They're running out of manpower. They're running out of resources. And so they're withdrawing from Afghanistan. They're eventually going to withdraw from Iraq, from Syria, from all these places. and attempt to use Saudi Arabia as a proxy to protect Israel, right? And fundamentally, the politics of this region are going to come down to Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Turkey, with Israel there, of course, holding on to a nuke like a fucking psychopath. But like, because Iran could take this region back over, right? Afghanistan could get claimed by Iran. Like, that's much more likely. It's much more likely that Iran and Pakistan will kind of take over Afghanistan, that Saudi Arabia will get into Iraq, Iran might, and there would be some kind of dispute here. Not to mention the Greater Israel Project, right? We all remember the Greater Israel Project. So, like, no, Vosh just doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. That's just a dumb thing to say. Like I said, get rid of them all, start government from scratch. We'd all have to show up at the halls of power, I think. Pope's in hospital for what the hell is it? Ventriculitis? What the hell is ventriculitis? Ventriculitis is the inflammation of the epidermal lining of the cerebral. Oh, it's in his brain. That's bad news. So he's got swelling in his brain. Oh, yeah, that's bad news. That's bad news. Oh, you don't just come back from that. You don't just come back from that. Yeah, you got shit going on in your brain. You don't just come back from that. How old is the Pope? How old is the Pope? He's 84. Like, it was probably he heard about the residential school graves, and Trudeau was like, you should apologize. And his brain just went... Right? God was just like, time to get out of there, Pope. Let's go, Popules. Out you come. That's all very stupid, what I just said. Just so you know, that's a very stupid thing that I just said. Well, I mean, it's time for a new pope, it looks like. This guy was good. He was a good pope. He did a good job kind of covering for the Catholic Church for a little bit. An important historical pope. Time for a new pope. I once saw Vosh bragging that he doesn't read theory. I'm not saying everyone needs to read theory, but Vosh seems a prime example of Dunning-Kruger. I know what that is, but I don't know what that is. You know what I mean? Like, I could kind of bluff my way through the conversation. Oh, yeah. That's exactly what it is. And you see this, I'll read it out. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a hypothetical cognitive bias, stating that people with low ability at a task overestimate their ability. Yeah. I see this all the time in educated professionals, right? Somebody like Jordan Peterson, I think, has a lot of this, where he really overestimates his ability to comment or critique the wider society when he's like largely illiterate. Like, he's not well educated on the subject of like economics or even critical social theories, really anything like that. And like, you listen to him talk, and he's attractive because he talks with such confidence, right? He speaks with such confidence to people who know less than he does, right? Like, the people he's talking to know way less than he does, and he knows nothing at all. And so that's why he's attractive, and that's probably why Vosh is also attractive, right? He speaks with confidence on subjects that he knows nothing about to people who know even less. And so I think you're right on the money with that, Onward. Like, and like, I don't necessarily, like, in this age, it's not that hard. It's not that hard to read theory. You don't even need to read it. There's audiobooks. Like, if you want to read the Communist Manifesto, you can, like, that's so dumb and easy to find that the Communist Manifesto. Like, there you go. Full audiobook. Boom. Somebody's done it, right? Somebody's even done a summary of it if you don't even want to waste your time on that, right? And and then the third one is Jordan Peterson's critique of the Communist Manifesto, which is embarrassing. That I can't believe that this actually is as far up here as it actually is. his critique of the Communist Manifesto was actually completely embarrassing. He admitted on a live stream before, like the night before, he literally read the Communist Manifesto the night before his debate with Zizek, with Slavoj Zizek, where he had this debate. He embarrasses himself. Like, so embarrassing that Slavoj Zizek doesn't even respond to it. Because it's so embarrassing. It's like this childish... He literally doesn't understand how capitalism works. Right? He's saying the idiotic, moronic stuff. Like, capitalism is the most innovative system in the world. Like, at least capitalism is generating wealth. You're like, oh my god, this guy is like just embarrassing. Like the only people who would take these statements seriously are people who know less than him, which are, most people. Yeah, and so the idea that you don't have access to this stuff, and like there's you literally could type in like anything, Lenin. Like, here, let's do Lenin audiobook. State and Revolution, Vladimir Lenin. Here it is, right? Like it's so accessible at this point. It's so at our fingertips. Like it's right there. That for somebody like Vosh, who pretends like he knows what he's talking about, but near as I can tell, he's just kind of a liberal, right? He's like Destiny in that way, where he's just a liberal, and like, yeah, and like. Well, and Jordan Peterson is really good at using the phrase cultural Marxism, which is a Nazi tactic, right? Like that's what the Nazis said of Marxists, that they couldn't actually debate Marxists or Marxism on economic grounds, which is like what Marxism actually is. It's an economic theory, right? And more accurately, it's an economic critique of capitalism. With its own like ideas and thoughts about how to evolve away from a capitalist system, and the phrase cultural Marxism, right, was used by the Nazis in a way to change the conversation from the economic critique and the economic theory, which the Nazis could never win on. You could and a modern day capitalist cannot win on in a Marxist conversation. That's why whenever you see Richard Wolff actually talking about having a debate with somebody, he trounces them, right? Because they are very stupid. They don't actually know anything, right? They barely know what their own system looks like. And meanwhile, Richard Wolff is like what the most prolific Marxist scholar perhaps in the world today, outside of China. I suspect that there's many Marxist scholars who don't make it to the mainstream in Western society, operating within the Chinese Communist Party. And like Xi Jinping himself is probably very astute. Like, I'd love to read some of his stuff, but I imagine it's very difficult to get a hold of. But I should actually try. I should really try. Anyway. As somebody who became politically aware in the Bush years, I never thought I'd see someone who calls themselves a leftist saying we need to stay in the Middle East. Yeah. Well, and that's also part of the shifting. What is that called? You guys might know this. The political spectrum has shifted to the right? So like, someone like Vosh calls himself a leftist, but he's, near as I can tell, he's just a liberal, right? He's just a liberal. He probably thinks capitalism is by and large a good system. He probably thinks the Overton window, exactly. The Overton window has shifted so far to the right that you call yourself leftist in the United States, but really what you mean is you're a liberal, right? And if you're a liberal, that basically makes you like center right, maybe center left, maybe, but far more likely you're center right. And especially if you're saying stuff like we need to stay in the Middle East, like, nah. You guys want to hear my argument? Here's my argument. Here's my argument for why we should stay in the Middle East. Here's my argument for why the Canadians have to sell weapons to Saudi Arabia. Ba 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 ba. If you wanna be a neo-fascist and you wanna stay in Saudi Arabia, if you wanna sell guns to Yemen, here's the actual argument that makes sense. It's gonna make you look like a Nazi, but you're actually a Nazi, so that's fine. Here's your argument. Here's your argument. I made up a fun song. Don't you love it? Yay! What a stupid song. Okay, stupid songs for stupid arguments that fascists will inevitably end up using. So, we cannot withdraw, and I don't believe this. I'm going to be explicit up front. I don't believe that this is the case, but this is the argument that will get used. We have to stay in the Middle East for one reason. There is organizations throughout the Middle East called the Muslim Brotherhood, okay? We know that they're well organized, and we know that they're very powerful because of the Arab Spring that happened in Egypt. When the Arab Spring happened in Egypt, right, they deposed their military dictatorship leadership, tossed them out. They held a democratic election. Who won that democratic election? The Muslim Brotherhood, okay? So the Muslim Brotherhood is the most organized group of people and also the most popular group of people. They come up and they seize the levers of power. They have control over Egypt. They are the ruling government in Egypt. The problem, especially for the imperialists, with the Muslim Brotherhood is that like their second stated agenda is the wholesale destruction of Israel, right? That they have a very clear stated agenda to destroy Israel because of the genocide that it is committing against the Palestinians, right? So that's something that the West is not going to tolerate. It's not going to tolerate the Muslim Brotherhood controlling the Suez Canal, controlling the Nile, controlling this major, like this passageway here is enormous. This is an enormous plot of land in geopolitics, right? This right here, oh, is that powerful. It is powerful, and it is powerful that the Muslim Brotherhood had control of Egypt, which is why the United States had to take them out, and did very quickly, and just reinstalled the military dictatorship, right? And so the Muslim Brotherhood didn't just vanish, right? They didn't just disappear. And you know that if the Muslim Brotherhood is organized enough and powerful enough to win a democratic election in Egypt, that they're in Saudi Arabia, who do you think they're committing a genocide against in Yemen? What do you think's happening in Yemen, right? Oman, same story in Iraq, same story in Iran. So the Muslim Brotherhood is actually one of the most powerful political organizations and political movements throughout this region, okay? So, if America and Canada and her allies and all of that were to leave the region, who's the most likely to take over? Who do you think, right? Yeah, it's the Muslim Brotherhood. And the Muslim Brotherhood has a stated agenda of overthrowing the Saudi princes. If Saudi Arabia falls, right, if the Muslim Brotherhood do another Arab Spring, Egypt style, in Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia falls, this means that the Americans' largest ally in the region outside of Israel is fucking gone, right? Is fucking gone. That makes Iran extremely powerful in the region. That makes Turkey extremely powerful in the region. And it means that the ruling class of Saudi Arabia, of perhaps Egypt, of this region, becomes a group of people who are literally saying, we need to destroy Israel. And what happens if they achieve that, right? What happens if they achieve that? Well, suddenly now you've got a Muslim Brotherhood that has nuclear bombs, right? You've got an Islamic State who you have been inflicting a war against for several decades that are walking around the region with nuclear bombs. Okay, so there's your argument for why the United States should remain in the Middle East forever. Reminder, that still makes you a Nazi, right? all of that I just said, if you're going to say that and you're going to be like, oh yeah, and that's the reason, that still makes you a white supremacist. That still makes you like a power mad colonialist. That still makes you a xenophobe. That still makes you a racist. That still makes you a neo-fascist. That's the argument they're going to use. We cannot afford to let the Muslim Brotherhood get control of nuclear bombs. That's the argument they're going to use, and that's the phrase they're going to say. We can't allow the Muslim Brotherhood to have control of nuclear bombs. And just to like throw back, they'll probably say weapons of mass destruction, right? They'll be like, we can't allow the Muslim Brotherhood to have weapons of mass destruction. Weapons of mass destruction. Weapons of mass destruction. It's better that we have the weapons of mass destruction as the white supremacist neo-fascists than the people we've been oppressing for decades. So, there you go, Vosh. There's a free one for you, you fucking liberal. I hope it's not racist to say, but I don't think everyone wants to live in a democracy. Well, and there's different ideas about what democracy looks like, right? Like, when we say democracy, we often imagine our system, right? The Westminster parliamentarian system here in Canada, right? And the United States, they imagine, like, the House, the Senate, and the presidency, like the three spheres of power. Like, that's a democracy. Anything other than that cannot be democracy, right? But the Chinese system is relatively democratic, right? Like, people are elected to the National People's Congress, the NPC in China. They hold elections for those positions, and then there is a lot of voting that happens within that body, right? And we call that authoritarian because it's different than our system, right? That we seem to believe that because we're voting for senators and congressmen, oh my God, it's in the name. It's literally called the Congress. And I'm like, what's it called when you're in there? The Congress people. Oh my God. We literally, like, think that because we're voting for these, like, two spheres and then there's the presidency, that somehow they actually do keep each other in check. Like, it's totally stupid. The John Dalton Machine. How you doing, bud? Glad to see you. It's authoritarian. Educate yourself about the mass executions that accompany the establishment of every communist regime. I mean, as if the capitalists did not do the exact same thing while establishing capitalism, bud. Like, as if that's always the case when you have, like, a corroded and dying system. Like, when the Chinese were establishing their system, they were literally getting rid of, like, a feudal kingdom, right? Like, they were dealing with kings, and, like, same story with the Russians, getting rid of Tsars. Like, and what, you think the what happened in France, the guillotining, that didn't have anything to do with capitalism? That's kind of an embarrassing statement, dude. Just gotta be straight with you. Maybe you're the one that needs to read up. The fact we gave it to them is the issue. They want the right to self-determination. Yeah, everybody wants the right to self-determination. And, like, there was a great moment in the movie War Machine. Brad Pitt did a really great film called War Machine, where the ambassadors for the Afghanistan people, they stood up and he stood up and was just like, we don't really understand this democracy thing. Like, we're supposed to stand up and have an election between two guys, but, like, the current ruler is doing just fine. Like, why are we having an election? And then on top of that, like, the country is so ravaged by war, and there's warlords all over the place, so the warlords just tell us who to vote for, and so we vote for that guy. So we're actually confused by this process. Like, why are we doing it, right? And the Americans, like this John Dalton fellow, I'm sure, they don't really have a connection to the idea that there's been a passing of history, that, like, things have changed over time and that things evolve and adapt over time. Like, in the United States itself, senators used to not be elected. Like in Canada, we don't elect our senators, and it was the same in the United States. They weren't elected, they were appointed, right? And that changed. It changed through an amendment, right? this idea that America is going to be able to pick up its own system and just drop it on top of Iraq or Afghanistan or any of that, like, that's not going to happen, dude. That's not going to happen. And it's only authoritarian when it's not corruptible. I don't know if I agree with that, right? Like, that's an interesting statement, Drew. Because corruption definitely has been a problem in China, and Xi Jinping recently did a fairly extensive anti-corruption campaign throughout China, which was largely successful, according to the polling data that comes out of Harvard, that people are pretty happy with what occurred there. I feel like corruption is very difficult to deal with. Like, corruption is very and no system has figured this out. Like, the Americans haven't figured it out, the Canadians haven't figured it out, the Russians haven't, the Chinese haven't. Nobody's figured it out. How do you make a system that doesn't have any corruption in it? Because corruption is, like, literally just like a human desire for this, like, to fill that existential void for more, right? Like, oh, I can get more. Like, I'm watching Breaking Bad right now, and I'm on the final season. No spoilers, but near as I can tell, like, the fatal flaw of Walter White is that he doesn't know when to say stop. He doesn't know when enough is enough. He has this sort of existential, like, crushing need to just continue harvesting and continue harvesting and continue harvesting. And I feel like that's just endemic of humanity, and it's something that we are going to be always struggling with as a people. Like, how do you overcome that? How do you overcome this desire to just have more? Yeah, we can't do. We were never doing good there in the first place. Like, we were never there to do good. We were there to steal their resources. Like, and it's obvious. It's become obvious. And what's going to be embarrassing is that once oil prices collapse and once oil stops being, like, the major thing, like, the Americans are kind of going to be like, well, what were we doing here? Like, what was this all about, right? No, I suspect, but no, I shouldn't say that. I was, like, going to say that, like, America is going to have, like, a big, like, come to Jesus moment. No, they're not. They're going to keep moving forward, and they're going to forget their own history. That's what's going to happen. They're just going to forget. Like, it's like these people, like this John Dalton guy will come in here and be like, oh, communist regime's establishment, mass executions that are coming. Literally, the United States had a fucking war of independence. Like, how fucking stupid do you have to be to come in and say something like that? He's got an American flag as his icon, coming in and saying dumb fucking shit, like, educate yourself about the mass executions that accompany the establishment of every communist regime, while his own country, that he's got a fucking flag about, had a fucking war of independence. Remember the Tea Party? Remember all this? No, guys like John Dalton just have mass amnesia, right? He doesn't know anything. He's completely illiterate, coming in and saying this dumb bullshit, while, like, literally his own country fucking fought a war of independence against the British. Oh, and let's not forget, fought that war of independence while committing a genocide against the First Nations people, while enslaving the black population. Gotta forget all that shit, though. Gotta forget all that fucking shit. Can't talk about any of that kind of fucking shit. And just like the powerful, strong American he is, he comes in, dumps that quote, and then has bounced. He's not here anymore, right? Because he's a fucking loser, right? He's a fucking loser saying that kind of dumb bullshit. Coming in here to, like, what's he doing? What's he doing? He's not challenging anybody. Certainly not himself. He's just fucking lazy. I wonder how many bedrooms John Dalton's house has. Yeah, exactly. That's all he really cares about. I'm sure he's going to tell us all about it. With his dumb fuck bullshit. That's all that is. Like, it's just dumb fuck shit. You gotta educate yourself. Educate yourself like I did. I'm self-educated. I educated myself. Yuck. I cannot believe that these Young Turk attacks have kind of persisted for as long as they have. I wonder how long this is. No, I'm not gonna fucking watch this. I mean, it makes sense from Aaron Mate's position, right? Like, Aaron Mate was accused by the Young Turks of taking money from the Russians. Like, that's a pretty big accusation, dude. Like, that's a pretty big, and especially because it's so baseless, right? Vaccines extremely effective against COVID variants of concern. Canadian study. Great. Great. I'm glad to hear it, man. I don't want to be dealing with this fucking COVID shit any longer. I'd love it if we could just stop. Ontario Township removing statues of past PMs in effort to encourage healing. There you go. There you go. Sudbury.com. And I don't really understand the argument that's like, oh, you shouldn't take down those statues. That's your history. I mean, John Dalton came in here and showed us that these guys aren't interested in their own history. Like, they're illiterate. They don't know fucking anything. So what's it matter, right? All these things are symbols of white supremacy. That's all they are, right? When do we start organizing a radical mass movement of workers? That's the neat part. You don't. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, just touching back on Vosh again, right? He just seems to me to be a liberal. That's it. He thinks capitalism is good. He thinks imperialism is good. He just wants people to have, healthcare. Okay, that makes him a liberal. ACAB includes Biden. Oh, yeah, I think I've seen this chart. Yeah, Biden budget gives $4 billion to the police, right? Biden requested $4 billion for Department of Justice and Homeland Security police grants for the year 2022, 10% more than last year and 46% over 2017 levels, right? Like, what's the difference between Biden and Trump again? Can anybody tell me what's the difference between Biden and Trump again? I'm not really seeing the difference. Not really. Like, it outside of the presentation, outside of the pageantry, I'm not really getting what it is I'm supposed to be thinking is different between Biden and Trump. Yeah, I've already said this, but water protectors just got a hold of documents that indicate the South Dakota National Guard was authorized to use lethal force to protect pipelines. They were explicitly told to kill people to protect the property of oil companies. Scary shit, dude. Scary shit. Trump was funnier. Trump was funny, dude. Like, Trump was funny. Like, that sometimes he would just say shit, and you would just be like, dude, that is hilarious. Like, inappropriate as shit, but boy, howdy. That fucking... man. Whereas now with Biden, like, he's going for, like, an Uncle Joe sort of thing, where he's like, come on, man, that's a bunch of malarkey. That's a bunch of malarkey, man, come on. Right? Yeah. We're burning something. I don't know what we're burning. Yeah. This actually really pisses me off. I don't like this at all. Like, what is this coming from? This is coming from Jen Zedong. I understand solidarity with Palestine, but, like, we've got to maintain our intellectual credibility when it comes to distinguishing between Zionism and Israel, right? Between Judaism and Zionism, right? And I worry that stuff like this is only fueling the Imperial West, right? Is only convincing the Imperial West and only allowing people to say that if you critique Israel or if you critique Zionism, you are being anti-Semitic, which is just like exactly the distinction that I think needs to be drawn. Like, we need to say, like, no, we are not going after Israelites. We're not going after Jews. We're not going after Judaism. We are interested in talking about Zionism, and that Zionism is real and that it needs to be confronted, just in the same way that you would confront Nazism, but not German, right? That Nazism isn't necessarily Germanism, much in the same way. If I lose to Biden, I may have to leave the country. You're still here? It's over. Go. Yeah. I love it when capitalists use this as an argument. Like, if you raise my taxes, I'll leave the country. Like, yeah, great. Get the fuck out of here. Boy, would that ever make our lives easier, eh? Wouldn't it make our lives so much easier if these capitalists just decided to leave of their own accord, right? Instead of us having to go through all the trouble of actually like forcing them out of the country or allowing them to stay but like reducing their power completely, right? It'd be so much better if they just left. You'd just be like, okay, bye. Go live your life in the Malaysian islands or wherever the hell you are with your underage teenage, like your underage girls, where you're creating like a rape pedophile island with Jeffrey Epstein, right? Just go. Just get the fuck out of here. I love it when capitalists say that, because I'm just like, because they don't know what to say. They literally are just like about it. When you say like, yeah, then get the fuck out of here, right? We don't need you. You're a net drain on the society. You cause nothing but problems for us, right? And you don't even have the courage to stick around and face the music, so get the fuck out of here. Happy to see you go. Yeah. I want to live in a world where people wearing swastikas or rainbows or black power shirts can coexist. I want to live in a world where LGBTQ people who want equal rights and black people who want to be safe aren't seen as equivalents to Nazis. Yeah, I don't get this, dude. I don't get this. Why are we pretending like people wearing swastikas and Nazis are part of the civil society? Like, it's so fucking weird. It's creepy how like Nazis have just sort of shown up and been like, oh, hey fellow legitimate political ideologies. Yeah, hey, we're all legitimate political ideologies working together. Yeah, we're all the same. Meanwhile, I'm like looking at the Nazis being like, didn't we used to kill these guys? That, like, what the fuck is this? But there's this great German saying, which is, if there are 9 people sitting at a table, and a 10th and a known Nazi comes and joins them, unopposed, there are 10 Nazis sitting at a table. Well, I'm not a fucking Nazi, and if a Nazi comes and sits at my table, I'm going to oppose him. I'm going to be like, you don't get to sit here. You're not a legitimate political ideology. You have no rights. You have nothing worth saying. We should take you out back and deal with you, right? Like, I don't understand when it became, like, in vogue for Nazis to be able to stand up and be fucking Nazis. Like, come on, man, is the pillow over the face of political possibility. It's absolutely the truth. I remember somebody in the early days set up, like, a meme of Joe Biden, and they had, like, he's like looking off in the distance, and there's like the American eagle and like the American flag and all this kind of stuff. And the quote is just, "Come on, man." The boomer. This is a really important quote from Bernie Sanders. The boomer generation needed just 306 hours of minimum wage work to pay for 4 years of public college. Millennials need 4,459. The economy today is rigged against working people and young people. This is what we are going to change. One hopes. One hopes. This is an embarrassment. Like, this alone completely defeats anybody who stands up and says, hey, I worked hard, and I'm an individual, and you know, I went to school, I paid my way through school. Yeah, okay, bud. Like, okay, boomer. Like, get over yourself, right? It's not like the society was structured to actually help you, right? Yeah, millennials just need to learn to shake hands better. Stop with the avocado toast. Just look at him in the eye, shake his hand, right? Hand your resume in, and then you'll start work the next day. That's what happened to me. Come on, what's the problem, man? Come on, man. Wow, what you're saying is a bunch of malarkey. I don't have any empathy whatsoever for these millennials, right? That's Joe Biden. Come on, man. Mortality rates in katorgas and gulags. Oh, interesting. Oh, yeah, okay. So the mortality rates under the Tsar rule of Russia, Communist Party rule of Russia. Huh. Seems as though there's something of an improvement. Oh, there's a big spike up here, though, John. Isn't that a problem? Yeah, there's a big spike up on World War II, right? Oh, yeah, you'd think. Big spike ups during the World War that was inflicted on them by the fucking Nazis. Or I should be specific, the capitalists, right? Like, I gotta stop saying Nazis, right? And I just gotta start saying, like, the Nazis and the capitalists were in bed with one another. I'm reading a book right now called The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, right? Big fucking tome, right? Really, really, really thorough, right? Like he's just going through the life of Hitler in like a big, long way. It's William L. Shirer. Anyway, and he's he always points out, and it's interesting because he just glazes off of it. He doesn't go deep, but he always does point out that the people who were funding Hitler from the early days onward were the capitalist industrialists. That Hitler was promising the destruction of the Marxists and the destruction of the Jews, and the industrial capitalists were like, great. Hey, the Max, how you doing, bud? Now that the Max is here, how about you entertain the troops for just a moment, bud? I'm just going to go use the washroom for just a second. Be right back. Oh, you're such a good little boy. Aren't you just the nicest little boy? Here you go, buddy. Have a bit of peanut butter. Here you go, buddy. Alrighty. Oh, don't work too hard, Max. Don't work too hard, bud. That's how they get you. That's how they get you, right? Like, you gotta take her easy, bud. Take her easy. Oy, ice that shoulder up. Ugh. Toronto police officer demoted for refusing to intervene in suicide, lying about being on another call. Weird. Yeah. Honestly, dude, like, I can really perceive how someone would get into police services and not really understand what it is they're getting into, right? That, like, you know, if you're walking around in the society, you're, like, looking at cops and you're just like, oh, these guys show up at protests, and yeah, sure, maybe they gotta, like, grab a hold of a guy every so often. But, like, cops got to deal with a lot of dumb shit that you don't think about, right? Like, when I was in funeral services, every scene, hey, Barnabas, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. Every scene I went to when I was in funeral services, there was a cop there. Every single scene. Unless it was the family calling or like a hospital or something. But, like, you know, those situations where they've just, like, found a body, right? So there's a couple of cops there. And, you know, you don't think that that's what you're going to be dealing with as a police officer. You don't think that you're going to be dealing with the dead. You don't think you're going to be dealing with, like, people who are suicidal or, like, drug addiction, that kind of stuff. And police don't necessarily get the training to be able to deal with any of this kind of stuff or to have compassion or empathy, right? A lot of their training is built on just personal safety and security, which is important. I'm not going to say otherwise. Personal safety and security and information gathering, right? That's what their main situation is. But there's no, like, how do you talk somebody off a ledge? Like, that's not real. Like, there's no... I'm sure there's, like, specialized training and all this that you can go for, but that's not in the general populace. And it's very easy for me to believe that a police officer could come across somebody who's, like, in the midst of an overdose and would just kind of let it happen. Oh, yeah, I'm too nice and too reasonable. Yeah. Well, thank you, Barnabas. That's so nice of you to say. That's so nice of you to say. I don't need another book, dude. I don't need another book. I've got too many books right now. Here, let me show you what I got on my plate. Let me show you what I got on my plate. So, I'm going through The Dragon of the Tropics, which is Venezuela and the Legacy of Hugo Chavez. Really good so far. Irving versus Irving. This is about the Irvings. And it's mainly about like the internal petty struggles that these capitalists were having with one another. It really makes these Irvings look like assholes. And what's incredible is that I think the author has like a lot of respect for the Irvings, and so he's writing it with this sort of like heroic terminology and all this. But it really is just making these Irvings look like fucking nightmare sociopaths, like and how petty and absurd that they actually were. But it's good to know about like how did they take over New Brunswick, right? The management of savagery, Max Blumenthal. Mach Deutschland vom Fascismus frei! I love it. Police are trained to persecute and enforce the law. I doubt many of them get training on basic psychology, how to diffuse a situation. Absolutely, they're not trained how to diffuse a situation. I know that that's true. They're trained to dominate a situation. They're trained to take over a situation. I've seen them do it. Like, I've been in situations, like, I have a long history of retail, right? And I have been in situations with cops where they are attempting to dominate and control and overwhelm the situation and use their badge, essentially, as the shield. And the whole time it was happening, I was just like, dude, like, I would just, like, slow it down, right? Start talking to them on a one-to-one level, right? Talking to people on a one-to-one level is the fastest way to diffuse situations. And what I mean by that, what I mean when I say talk to people on a one-to-one level, is get rid of, like, I am not the avatar of this institution. I'm a person, and you are not a customer or an avatar of some kind of thing. You are also just a person, and we have found each other here. Here we are together in this situation, and we're both trying to figure it out. We're both trying to figure out how to get through it, and I'm working with you, and you're working with me, and we're going to figure out how to get through it together. And so I need your patience, and I just need some information, and if we can just calmly get through this together, we can move forward and try and improve things. And that kind of talking is, in my like, I think that's way more helpful. Yeah, exactly. Nah, put your hand on the gun and be like, sir, I need you to stop talking right now. Sir, I need you to sit back there. Sir. Yeah, that's the way forward. The Trouble with Billionaires, right? Haven't had a chance to crack this one open, but I'm looking forward to it. Oh, really important one. Naomi Klein's newest one, On Fire, The Burning Case for a Green New Deal. This one I'm really looking forward to. Naomi Klein is kind of a breezy read, so I should just sit down one evening and just, like, it's so weird. Like, she's such a good author. She knows how to make something, like, super breezy and super easy to read while simultaneously talking about, like, the most difficult subject matter you'll ever talk about. Her book, Disaster Capitalism was an extremely important read. She really went through Milton Friedman's Chicago Boys and the rise of neoliberalism, and really told a very effective story that made it kind of a breeze to learn that history. Naomi Klein is just like must read, like no logo, must read. Yeah, and then The Rise of the Intangible Economy, Capitalism Without Capitalism. I don't know anything about this book. I just thought it was interesting looking. So this is what's on my plate right now, on top of The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, and I've got Civilizations in the West, and let's not forget the Holy Bible, right? Gotta crack open the Holy Bible every so often. Oh my God, I need to start clearing some of this off my desk, dude. It's too much. Ugh. My problem, and this is something I'm starting to accept about myself, and I need to really actually accept about who I am, is that good for you, Barnabas. That's a heavy read, dude. Even I haven't gone through that. I did that audiobook style. Yeah. Hey Grace, how you doing today, bud? How you doing, or bud? How you doing today, Grace? The I went audiobook. I went audiobook with Capital, and you're gonna be better off for it. You're gonna be better off for it. Yeah. Well, because you're getting information like etched into your brain. Like you're actually carving channels in your brain. One of the things I'm getting used to is I'm pretty sure I have ADHD, and right back at you, bud. And I'm pretty sure I have ADHD, and so I'm always bouncing here, there, and everywhere. I can't just sit down and like read a book, right? Like it just doesn't work that way for me. But I can read like a chapter of one book, and then read a chapter of a different book, and then read a chapter of a different book, and then like play some music, and then play a video game, and then read another chapter. And like I'm always like that. Like that's who I am as a person. And people say it's like scatterbrained or and it also has other side effects. I'm very forgetful. So I sometimes even forget that I have these books in the first place. If I don't write it down, it doesn't exist, that kind of thing. And so I gotta actually like tackle these books and finish something. Gotta finish these damn books. Oh, I'm also working on American Gods right now. I forgot about that. Anyway. Enough about me. How are you guys doing? Have I tried speed? I have not. And Adderall is another one that people recommend to me. I think speed is derivative of Adderall, isn't it? That those two are kind of cousins with one another. I think I want to get like officially diagnosed before I actually medicate, and I don't want to medicate myself. I don't want to medicate myself. I want a doctor to be involved, and I haven't. I don't know why that's so funny, Barnabas. Have you tried slow? I think that's funny, man. Yeah, opinion of China continues to decline across the world. Xi has managed to squander decades of soft power. Well, and like, when they say across the world, like, where are they talking about? Like, are they talking about America? Or are they talking about, because like, oh yeah, well, Japan makes sense, because Japan is actually quite concerned about the rise of China, given its location, right? That they're concerned that China is going to start overwhelming stuff, that they'll start to get in through North Korea, South Korea, right? Start going that way. That makes sense. Australia, again, white Westerners, colonial view. And also, there are the most open and honest conversations about the rise of China that I have seen are coming out of the institutions in Australia. Because the Australians are the ones sitting there saying, hey, like, they're right there. Like, they're right frickin' there. And there's also big, like, commercial interests. Yeah, and exactly, Mock. Japan and China are ideologically opposed and have been at war historically for thousands of years. And, like, Japan destroyed China, right? Like, and the Chinese, like, the Chinese have not forgiven Japan. Let's be really straight. The Chinese have never forgiven Japan, and the Japanese haven't really ever apologized. So, like, there's, yeah, exactly as you say, like, thousands of years of tension between Japan and China that isn't just going to vanish, right? And the Australians, though, are the ones who are having the really interesting conversations about what is to be done about the rise of China, where should we go. And, I mean, lots of people in Australia are kind of like, well, like, when the 2008 financial collapse happened, we didn't get hit with that. And it was because most of our economy is with China. We've really tied our economy to China in many ways. And there are lots of, like, people in Australia who are saying, like, yeah, we could just keep trading with them. Like, could we just, like, not have a conflict? Who else? South Korea, United States, Canada, yeah, that makes sense. Germany. I'm a bit surprised Germany, honestly. Like, again, though, this is like, yeah, the world. Who's not here, right? Who's not on this? Oh, anybody in the Middle East, Africa, Russia, right? Outside of Germany, like the Belarus, Romania, Poland, right? So like, if the NATO countries are the only people you give a shit about, then you can say the world, right? That's basically what this tells me. Which, I mean, that makes sense. The lines are being drawn that way, right? It's going to be Europe, Canada, the United States, Australia, and South Korea, Japan, probably India. Let's be straight. I'm actually surprised I didn't see India on that list higher, because India is also one of these countries that's quite concerned about a rising China. And it makes sense. Like, it's right there, right? Like, they're right there. But I was surprised they're not higher, honestly. So, okay. So those countries, like the traditional, NATO allies, they're the ones who are banging the drum on war with China. And meanwhile, the rest of the world is like, we could just not. Like, we could just straight up not. And they're even like Australia is sitting there being like, could we not? Like, could we not have a war with China? Like, our economy is pretty tied in with China. Like, they're right fucking there, dude. Like, we're doing good business with China. Do we have to go to war with China? Like, really? Why? And I find myself saying that same thing. Like, why? Why do we have to go to war with China? And the only thing that I can really land on is that that's all the United States knows how to do. It's all they know how to do. They don't know how to build stuff. They don't actually know how to create projects. They don't know how to pour their existential meaning into any other project other than destruction. Like, what was the last building project that the United States actually embarked on was the border wall, right? Trump's border wall, right? I mean, they've been building that border wall for a long time, so it's not Trump's border wall, but like, literally the only thing that the United States has built in the last 40 years is bombs, military weapons, and defensive structures like walls, right? Meanwhile, literally the whole rest of the world is like, hey, we could build like high-speed rail. We could build dams. We could build ports. We could build crucial infrastructure. We could keep building. Germany hating China is probably a product of racism. We have large Turkish and Chinese populations here, and with growing nationalist movements, it would be reasonable to assume that Germany would be a hotspot of anti-Chinese sentiment. You would know better than I would, bud. You would know better than I would. That's scary to hear. That's really scary to hear. Because you would think that, like, there would be, especially in Germany, there would be like a deeper awareness of where that kind of thinking leads, right? So, but humans are humans, and we have a tendency of forgetting our history. Historical amnesia is a major problem. Like, we don't learn from our mistakes. We don't know what happened last year. We forget. And that's why elections, I think, are important, because elections are the moment when we can bring the history up, right? And hopefully spark something in the populace's memory. Because this cultural amnesia thing that we're going to go through is going to be a like, when the United States pulls out of the Middle East, right? The Americans will just forget about it. Literally. They will just act as though it never happened. That is what will happen. They'll just walk away from it and be like, okay, well, and then some event will occur where, like, Iran will bomb something, or Iraq will bomb some infrastructure in America, and Americans literally will act as though it's like, why are they doing that to us? Well, that was so long ago, right? That's the shit they're gonna say. A lot of people are uneducated about the Holocaust. They blame Poland because Auschwitz was located there, which, yeah, that's fucking ignorant as shit, dude. That's ignorant as shit. I mean, poor Poland, right? Like, Poland's in the middle of these two fucking giants swinging at one another. Poor Poland. Holy fuck. I don't understand how you can be uneducated about the Holocaust. Like, it seems like it's... I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that. We have people here in Canada being like, Canada's not systemically racist. Excuse me while we dig up this fucking grave full of like 1,000 children body, right? Like fucking, yeah. No, I get it. Because that requires hard work. It requires hard work to really know that your people did that and to really understand where it came from and really understand all of that. Just in the same way with the residential school system here in Canada. It requires a lot of difficult work, and we do not give... Capitalism does not afford people the luxury of the time to be able to deal with that shit, right? We are not afforded the time to be able to actually grieve, to be able to actually reflect, to be able to actually, like, critique our culture in that way, right? To grow, to be adults, right? Capitalism wants us to be infants forever, right? What's the word I'm trying to say here? It infantilizes us. Is that a word? Infantilizes us? I'm really struggling here. Infantilizing. I just was struggling, right? Capitalism turns us all into infants and keeps us that way forever, right? We are not permitted to grow as people. We remain infants forever. Yeah. And when we're confronted with these dark... Yeah, it's just hard to say, Grace. You got me. You pegged me. Here I am thinking I'm a raconteur, a true storyteller, and I just get hit with the infantilism. There, I did it. Infantilism. Great success. Trudeau pledges to begin all land acknowledgements with another, less sincere land acknowledgement. Ah, the Beaverton. Nailing it. No, I understand. It's okay if you want to dig on me. Outside, you can fuck with me all you want. I'm easy breezy, beautiful cover girl. Hair flip. What's the difference between Texas and Texas? Texas can keep your electrical grid operational. A Muslim's perspective of the Uyghur narrative. Well-sourced rejection of the Western propaganda train. Oh, that's in Medium, too. Oh, this is actually an interesting article. Well, I am definitely going to check this article out. Oh, yeah, I'm looking forward to this article. Because, like, the Uyghur narrative, in my view, has just collapsed. It's not real. Like, and as we're moving forward, it's getting more embarrassing. Like... Especially here in Canada, as we're exhuming these like mass graves, like literally dealing with an actual genocide that actually occurred here in Canada, while simultaneously selling weapons to Saudi Arabia to maintain this genocide, end this genocide, we're pointing the finger at China and being like, "You're making vocational schools. That's the same." Yeah. Boris says it's no longer necessary to work from home, so city people get back to offices. Let's kickstart the local economy for shops and cafes who suffer badly. Some people have become complacent, liking this new style of working. Well, those folks will never work for me. Lord Sugar. Yeah, billionaire wants people back to the office to save shops and cafes. Nothing to do with the fact that he's a landlord with a huge portfolio of office buildings. Yeah. Got to get these plebs back to work so that they can keep paying rent to me for nothing, right? Landlords, capitalists. Double vaccinated Ontarians. When do we stop wearing masks? That's the neat part. You don't. I actually think I'm going to keep wearing the mask. I think I'm going... I hope we get to a point where if I just, like, forget my mask or something, it's not, like, the biggest fucking deal in the world. But, like... This entire time, I used to get sick probably about 3 to 4 times a year. Anytime anything came through, I got sick, for sure. But since this all happened and I've been wearing my mask, haven't been sick once, not even one time. And so, I'm gonna keep wearing the mask. I think it's a good idea, because like, it's just a public health issue. It's just like, I just want, I just don't want to be sick. I just don't want to be sick. And it turns out there's a bunch of people in the world who, like, if they have to put a piece of cloth over their face, then suddenly it's like, my liberties are being offended. So, we'll see how long it actually lasts. Because, a guy like me with ADHD and forgets everything all the time. We'll see. Six Nations police investigate arson attempt at church with family inside. Yikes. 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 You hate to see that. Jeff Bezos makes some $2,537 every second of the day. Got that? That means Jeff Bezos, the richest guy on the planet, makes nearly 3 times more in 1 second than the median worker in this country makes an entire week. That is morally obscene. Tax the billionaires. This is the thing that I think people who are defenders of this kind of grotesque wealth growth don't fully get, is that, like, they'll always come in and be like, oh, well, you earned it. You earned it. And it's like, literally no one earns this. Like, there's no possible argument. There is no way to earn this. This is obviously policy failure. This is obviously policy failure. That, like, if you don't look at this and think that this is gross naturally by the fact that it exists, then we have a problem, right? Then we have a very, very big problem. That, like, you think that this is fine. And usually I find that the problem is that people think that anyone can make hundreds of billions of dollars. Like, and the only reason you haven't made hundreds of billions of dollars is because you're not working hard enough. And it's just like, no, you get that it's a closed system, right? And you also get that it's a loop. And you start talking that way to these people, and you realize pretty quickly, like, no, they don't get that. They don't understand that, like, my spending is your earning, right? And that your earning is my spending. And they don't get that, like, Jeff Bezos hoarding this wealth is actually extracting wealth from the wider economy. Like, they don't get any of that. And so if you think that these guys are earning their wealth in a vacuum, yeah, of course you think it's completely fine. But it's not. Like, it isn't. Like, even if, and this is the great, even if they did earn it, even if there was some kind of thing that said they earned it, well, guess what? It's going to collapse the economy, right? Hoarding this much wealth, extracting this much wealth from the economy is going to collapse the economy. So you have a practical concern. Even if you separate the moral one, even if you concede all of the, like, they earned it points, all that kind of stuff, then the question becomes, okay, so what are you going to do about the collapsed economy? And they don't know, obviously. Fun fact, with the net value, these guys take loans from the bank and then pay those back with the hoarded wealth. This is how they avoid paying taxes. Yeah, there's a lot of ways for them to avoid paying taxes. Yeah, they take out 1/10 the loan value of their net wealth. Yeah, like, they just don't. Like, once you have this much money, you're just on a different realm of existence. Like, you literally can do anything you want because you can just pay the fine, right? Park your car wherever you want, break whatever city ordinance you want, as long as there isn't actual legitimate jail time associated with it. And let's be straight, if there was, your lawyer would just be like, Jeff Bezos is a fine community member and he shouldn't do any jail time, and so he won't. Right? What judge is going to throw Jeff Bezos into prison, right? So you can just do what you want, because you have a fucking $1 billion. It's ridiculous. All right. Ugh. Ooh, China bad bingo. Oh, CCP, China is just as bad as Israel. Han supremacy. Mao killed 100 bajillion people. Tankies ruin every group. China is settler colonial. Oh, this is fun, actually. I could really see this. I don't know what this is. Free Tibet. Yeah, that's a good one. Oh, man. Only 50... I'm glad that they're reporting it this way. Only 59% of Canadians believe the recent BC heat wave was caused due to human-caused climate change. That is a huge problem. I'm glad that they're saying only, because, like, this is a massive, 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 massive problem in our society. What is that then? That's 41% of people think that natural phenomena such as ocean currents and jet streams. Like, so 41% of the society is fooling themselves, right? Almost 1 out of every 2 people you meet. Like, fucking yikes, yeah. Like, that's some terrifying shit right there. That's some terrifying shit right there. What are we gonna do about that, guys? Like, what the fuck are we gonna do about that? That there's this, like, high-level delusion that exists in the society. Like, the only thing we can do is just keep telling the truth. And just hope that, like, the truth will set us free, I guess. Because, like, X number of seahorses boiled in the ocean, apparently. Please confirm. What? X number of seahorses? What are you talking about, bud? Are you talking... Is this something I'm supposed to be searching? Seahorses boiled in the ocean. That's weird, if this is true. Oh, yeah, no. This... Never mind. That's a different thing. Heat wave! Let's just pause for a minute after the heavy material that we just went through. And let's just look at some seahorses. What do you think? Huh? Every so often, it's good to pause and just be like, okay, seahorses. Look at these guys. Aren't they ridiculous? These guys are unbelievable. Like, just like these weird little horsies, and they're just bouncing around. That's so awesome. I would love... I would love to, like, have a seahorse as a pet and put, like, a little doll on its back, right? Have a little doll on the back of one of these guys, and just they're, like, bobbing along, and they've got, like, Woody from Toy Story, just being like... Yeah, Barnabas, sometimes randomness, you just need to cleanse the palate. You just need to cleanse the palate. Yeah, these are the same people that are wearing tin hats or believe in fake news. Yeah. It's just scary that there's so many of them, dude. That's really what it is. It's just scary that there's so many of them. You know? Like, I would be sitting here saying this if there was only 10%. But we're looking at like 40%. Ugh. Yeah, you're right, Grace. Don't put toys on these guys. I don't think they would like that. My little dog, Milo, whenever I put a hat on him or like a jacket or anything, he just looks at me and he's just like, "What are you doing?" So I suspect like a critter like a little seahorse would not appreciate that. Would probably be like, "This monkey is a demon." Do you have a reward credit card with us? Nope, I'm good. Would you like to open one today? You get no thanks. 15% off your purchases. I don't really come here enough. Select products and you'll have an opportunity to justify opening credit cards. So, for even more discounts at our online store where shipping is free and you're Ultra Card member. I'm sorry your boss makes you say that. Please never come back to this place and go bankrupt. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Today is the 114th year of Frida Kahlo's birthday, a great woman, artist, person with disability, and our comrade from the Communist Party of Mexico. Oh yeah, Frida Kahlo, what a champion. Let's do a little Frida Kahlo. What do you think? Frida. Always nice to delve into a little bit of history. She was a Mexican painter, known for her many portraits, self-portraits, and her inspired nature and artifacts of Mexico. Inspired by the country's popular culture, she employed a naive folk art style to explore questions of identity, post-colonialism, gender, class, and race in Mexican society. I actually think it's going to be more effective to see some of her work. We're all familiar, right, with the eyebrow, right? Oh, come on now. Really beautiful stuff. Lots and lots of self-portraits. I didn't realize she had so many self-portraits. What, did they not have a mirror? Waka 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 waka. Dads take care and birth their young. Yeah, I say this to Walmart workers. Seahorse is 3+ inches. Yeah, they're very small. They're very small. So if you're gonna put a toy on them, the toy itself would also have to be so tiny. Yeah. That's a beautiful shot. Okay. 8 people were wounded when a person began shooting at people near Fort Worth, Texas, car wash, and then multiple armed police returned fire. Most of the wounded were innocent bystanders. Texas new lax gun laws go into effect September 1st. Yep. The way to defeat a bad guy with a gun is with a good guy with a gun. Oh, 30 California police officers caught having sex with underage prostitute. People are weird, dude. People are weird. Was this like an event? Was this like...
The ABC 7 News I-Team has exclusive new information from an interview with the 18-year-old woman at the center of the Oakland police sex scandal. Good evening, I'm Kristen Z, in for Dan Ashley.
And I'm Amma Dates. That scandal has spread to even more law enforcement agencies. The latest, Livermore Police.
Dan Noyes is here with the first of several reports you'll see only on 7. Dan?
Kristen and Amma, the scandal is growing. At this point, dozens of careers are on the line. Officers, sergeants, and captains are under investigation for having sex with a young prostitute. Several incidents when she was underage. In many ways, she's a typical teenager, concerned about her appearance for our interview.
Like, this kind of behavior indicates the rot of the culture, right? The rot of the culture of the police. Like, they all, like, I would not be surprised to find out that this was like a rite of passage. That if you wanted to be part of the, like, local police force, if you wanted to be part of this, like, brotherhood, which is probably what they called it, then you need to go find an underage prostitute and have sex with her, right? That you need to go with your buddies and, like, it's like the rite of passage. Like, that's exactly the kind of fucked up shit that our culture is into, for sure. Ugh. We gotta face some facts. That the masses are poor, that the masses belong to what you call the lower class. And when I talk about the masses, I'm talking about the white masses, I'm talking about the black masses, and the brown masses, and the yellow masses too. We gotta face the fact that some people say you fight fire best with fire, but we say you put fire out best with water. We say you don't fight racism with racism. We're gonna fight racism with solidarity. We say you don't fight capitalism with no black capitalism. You fight capitalism with socialism. Fred Hampton, who I believe, Fred Hampton, is he one of these? He came to prominence, Jup. And yes, he is one of the people who was assassinated. Yeah, in December 1969, he was drugged, shot, and killed in his bed during a pre-dawn raid at his Chicago apartment. The Chicago Police Department and the FBI. So they assassinated him. It's an assassination, just like Martin Luther King, just like Malcolm X, right? Like these fucking idiots who are walking around saying like, oh, there's no systemic racism. What the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, it's just that, you know, the last time there was like a big civil rights movement, literally all of the leaders were assassinated by the state. Yeah. Oh, Barnabas. That's, maybe if you get like a following, right? Like, I think the divide is very simply this, that as long as you're willing to just be behind the camera like this and you're not telling people to go anywhere, it's when you start getting people to go places. That's when you're going to get shot. That's when you're going to get shot. And somebody like Fred Hampton was actually so super dangerous. And like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King were allowed to be the people they were as long as they stayed in their little group. right? They became a threat to the establishment when they started to make inroads with other racial communities. When they started to make inroads with the white community, the Chinese community, right, the Indian community, the Latino community, that's when they became a threat. Because the power structure knows, like, oh, it's great. Like, if let's say there was this big upswell of, like, black people and black power and all this kind of stuff. Well, as long as they stay insular, and as long as they're in their little group, then you can use them as a cudgel against the other groups. But if they suddenly become peaceful and start to spread into other racial groups and start to actually speak about class issues, that's when they become dangerous, and that's when they needed to be assassinated, which they were. Ugh. Never forget Fred Hampton. Like, just the idea that occurred. That Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton were assassinated by the United States government. And we know. Just that alone should tell you that we need a rebellion. Like, we need a rebellion. It's pretty obvious. Which, incidentally, if you're here in Toronto listening, July 17th, it's a Saturday, 11 to 2, please come to Yonge and Dundas. 11 to 2, July 17th. There's an anti-poverty rally coming there. Please, if you're in the city of Toronto, please come on down. Yeah, the privilege of pandemic private jets, how wealthy Canadians travel during COVID-19. Meanwhile, these private jets are like one of the biggest problems for climate change. Like, private jets should be completely abolished. Like, we're going to need more seahorses and a rebellion. We could become the Seahorse Rebellion. Everybody wears seahorses on their chests, have like a shield with a seahorse on it. It'd be very confusing. And people would ask us, like, what's with the seahorse? And it'd be like, what? You figure it out. We'd never answer them. We'd just be like, whatever, shut up. Companies dressing up jobs they know are shitty in retail and food service with names like this to get applicants and then not paying employees like a partner or an assistant. Just say it's retail and stop pretending. Coffee production assistant. That's fucking embarrassing, dude. That's fucking embarrassing. Coffee production assistant. Just even when they were calling it a barista, it was stupid. Just like fucking. Renaming Dundas Street approved by Mayor's Executive Committee. Yeah. If they can placate the masses by renaming shit, removing statues and renaming shit and not addressing the structural issues, they'll do it. That's classic liberalism. That's liberalism 101. If you can get away with saying you give a shit, it means you don't need to do any shit. See, this is actually really great. I'm really great that this is in front of us right now because that's clever, DJ. I like that. How you doing, bud? Good to see you. Is that considered horse cavalry? Good. Before I launch into this, good opportunity to please just hit like, hit share, hit subscribe. If you do have a little bit of money jangling around your pocket in my Patreon, please consider donating or please considering upping your donation. You guys are wonderful. I hate having to pitch that shit at you. I really do. I wish if I could do this for free, I would. Anyway. And one day perhaps I won't have to. It's not that far away. You know, that's something I think about. I'm like, I literally just want enough to pay my rent. That's it. And if I can get enough to pay my rent, I'll never talk about the Patreon again. I'll never talk about it again. I'll never pitch anything at anybody. I'll never do it. Because that's all I want. Is enough to pay my rent. Just make it through. Anyway. Early signs of fascism. Now, what's interesting about this, right? And I've read an awful lot about fascism, right? And the people who have done the work on fascism and who have researched and done this are excellent scholars and have done a lot of really good work. But I genuinely walked away from most of these texts being like, I feel like these guys have made a fundamental error at the base of their work. That it's a foundational error, and that foundational error is the assumption that fascism and capitalism are different, that they are actually different systems, right? So, like, powerful and continuing nationalism. I feel like every single capitalist nation I've ever seen have a powerful and continuing nationalism. Like, God save the Queen and the land of the free. Like, for real. Like, there are people who are, like, taking the knee at football games, and people are going, like, boo! You gotta respect the flag, right? And that's always been the case in America, right? You gotta respect the flag, right? Powerful and continuing nationalism. Has there ever been a time in American history where there hasn't been powerful and continuing nationalism? Like, seems to me like that's pretty baked in to the capitalist system of America. Disdain for human rights. I mean, for God's sakes, like, American capitalism literally, like, just North American capitalism committed a genocide against the First Nations people while enslaving the black population, right? Like, while simultaneously writing a document that was calling for, like, liberty and freedom for all and equality and all this shit, right? So, like, disdain for human rights? Yep. Tell me how capitalism is different than fascism again? Identification of enemies and scapegoats as a unifying cause. Well, you don't think that the capitalists in America were using the British as a scapegoat, or the First Nations people as scapegoats, or black people as scapegoats? So again, supremacy of the military. I mean, do I need to really talk about that? Like, do I really need to talk about that? Like, again, how is capitalism different from fascism? Rampant sexism. Again, like, how is capitalism different than fascism again? Controlled mass media. Like, again, how exactly is fascism different than capitalism? Obsession with national security. Religion and government are intertwined. Like, corporate power is protected. Labor power is suppressed. Disdain for intellectuals and the arts. Obsession with crime and punishment. Rampant cronyism and corruption. Fraudulent elections. Like, I feel like all of those things, you can look at American and British history and German history through the capitalist periods, and like, what exactly is the difference between fascism and capitalism exactly? Like, I just don't see it, right? That you can really only create a list like this and maintain this list if you are convinced from the outset that fascism is somehow different than capitalism. But if you don't make that base assumption and you just say, is capitalism different than fascism? Then you look at a list like this and you're like, not really. Like, no, how? How is capitalism different than fascism? Like, it seems to me like the two are just kind of, and that the only true difference that I have ever found, right? The only difference I've ever found between fascism and capitalism is that when the victims of the system are foreigners, especially non-white foreigners, it's capitalism. And when the victims are domestic or white, then it's fascism. And that's the only distinction I have ever seen between fascism and capitalism. That when the beneficiaries are us and we are inflicting it on someone else, it's capitalism. But when the victims are us and the beneficiaries are someone else, then it's fascism. And that seems to be the only distinction I've ever seen. And again, all of that said, that the people who have done this research and have done this work, I think, have done so honestly and have done good work and are excellent documentarians and are excellent historians. They've just sort of made this base assumption that they assume fascism and capitalism are different when they're not. Like, fascism is like, it was the name of a political party, right? That it was the political party of Mussolini, right? Mussolini's party was the fascist party, right? And it operated within capitalism just fine. It was a political party. And then, of course, we connect Germany to fascism because they become allies in World War II, right? And then it becomes just a useful word for the capitalists to use to create a distinguishing thing between the capitalists who are on our side and the capitalists who are against us. That the capitalists that are on our side are called capitalists, and the capitalists we are currently fighting, i.e. the Italians, the Germans, and the Japanese, are fascists. Much in the same way that, like, the Axis and the Allies, right? Like, these sorts of slogans and names get used to distinguish groups, right? So you have the capitalists and the fascists, and that's what created this distinguishing line. But when you actually take a look at it, you're like, the fascists are capitalists. Like, Hitler was funded by capitalists, right? Explicitly stated. Like, it's pretty clear to me. So, again, what is actually the difference between capitalism and fascism? Mussolini supported Hitler's power grabs in Austria and Czechoslovakia, and Hitler supported Mussolini's power grabs in Albania and North Africa. Exactly. They worked together. They were allies, right? They looked at one another and they understood that a war between them would probably weaken them. Whereas if they just allied up, then they could go to war with some of the smaller powers, right? And just sort of bro down. Didn't work out for either of them. Stay away from Connect.to. Toronto is building its own broadband network, and anti-poverty groups want to make sure big telecom isn't involved. Yeah, good luck with that. Yeah. Oh, yeah, big telecom's not going to come along and just scoop that up. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Yeah, U.S. healthcare be like, this is like fucking heartbreaking shit right here, man. Like, show me the like absolute despicable nature of your system in a single picture, please. Like, I feel like if you're like a kid, you're looking at this being like, what's even happening here? I don't understand this at all. Like, guy on a gurney having to stop at an ATM. Unbelievable. I see your fuck Trudeau truck and raise you a Trudeau failure sign prominently displayed on the driveway in my view every time I drive home. How many COVID deaths, suicides, bankruptcies, and lockdowns does it take to close our airports and borders? Trudeau, you are a total failure. Yeah. I actually think, like, I don't really have a big opinion about Trudeau's COVID response, honestly. Like, outside of, it's really, really obvious that they erected the CERB in a panic, that they didn't know what else to do. Because capitalists have no ideas, and they are very dumb, like, by their nature. They like passed the CERB in a huff, very hastily, and then recognized that was a mistake, that they shouldn't have done that, because the capitalists are like, oh, you can't take care of people. If you take care of people, how do we exploit them, right? And that narrative has persisted, right? Oh, if the government takes care of people, then how can we exploit them for cheap labor? That's essentially what we're doing right now. That's essentially the argument we're having. We're having this like back and forth argument about like, I can't find workers to exploit. The problem is the government. Like, imagine how crazed you must be and how insane you must be as an individual to genuinely say out loud, the government is taking care of people too effectively, so I can't exploit them for cheap labor, and believe that you're not like a cartoon villain, right? Like, if you're saying that kind of shit out loud, you are like a Death Eater. Like you are like in Skeletor's army. Like you're part of Hydra. Like I don't know what else to say to you. Like you're literally saying, oh, the government could take care of everybody. Look, the government can take care of everybody. Isn't that great? We can feed and clothe people. But the problem is that I can't exploit people and enslave them for cheap labor. Oh, it's a problem. Holy shit. Well, okay, buddy. Okay, you fucking psychopath. Jesus fucking Christ. Far-right militia takes hold of a small island town in Washington. They're becoming the new norm. Yeah, like, we should be concerned about that. We should be concerned about that. Tensions are rising after residents say a right-wing extremist group is tearing the fabric of the community apart. Jeez Louise. The Washington 3% militia, 3% is, Mock, you might know this, is 3%, is that, I feel like 3% is something. No, I don't know. That led me to just another article. I don't care about that. Extremists running for office. Oh man, they're like running for office and all this kind of shit. Stealth takeover of the region. Yeah. Like, that's terrifying shit. 3%ers, the far-right group. Yeah, I thought so. Like, we know that the FBI and the CIA are both, at least in public, saying that these far-right groups are a big problem. And this kind of stuff, like, I think, ironically, what they're doing is going to backfire on them. I hope so. Because it's actually bringing the rest of the community together in ways we haven't really been together in a while. Oy. Like, you guys know me, man. Like, my position on these, like, far-right neo-Nazi, like, fascist organizations is, like, these guys don't have rights. They don't get to just be part of the civil society. Like, we used to murder these guys. Like, I don't understand why we're giving them any credence whatsoever. Like, if you're willing to stand up and say outright, we should round people up and murder them, then guess what? You basically just signed your banishment from the civil society. And it's odd that that isn't understood. That's odd that that's not understood in our society. Like, it's a bit weird, honestly. Memo to Canada's Conservatives: hating Justin Trudeau isn't enough. Yep. No, the Conservatives are not going to pull up. They're not going to pull up. They have no ideas. They have been called out. That this is the wider society is looking at these guys and are seeing that they are not a valid option. We'll see what happens over the election. The electorate are pretty gullible and can be convinced. But, like, my thing with the Conservatives is, like, what the fuck are they going to run on? Like, they have no platform. Like, they genuinely don't. Like, what is their platform? A doubling down on austerity, neoliberal, trickle-down economics? Like, that's a failure. Like, even the stupidest, like, most gullible rube, well, not the stupidest, there's still, like, 25% support for the Conservative Party. But, like, if you are even a right-winger, yeah, this is a good way of saying it. If you are even on the right wing, so, like, the Conservatives are a far-right group, right? Like, they are, like as attached to the capitalist death cult as you can get. They're literally, like, scapegoating actual Nazis in their party, right? Like, that's where they're at. So if you are on even the right wing, you're looking at this being like, okay, well, neoliberal trickle-down economics is a fraud. We know. Like, it's obvious. It's in front of us. Climate change is real. That's a significant issue. That's like a national security issue. Like, so we got to deal with that. Oh, this party says it doesn't exist. Yikes. Yikes. So not only are they dead in the water economically, they're dead in the water. They're dead in the water on the climate change issue, environmentally. And then what? Social issues? They can't just say woke. They can't just keep walking around being like, woke, wokety, woke, woke, woke. That's literally the most embarrassing shit ever, right? Like, every time I hear anybody say woke, I just, like, cringe, and I'm just like, oh my god, it's so fucking embarrassing. And the idea that people listen to that and go like, oh yeah, that works, right? The 3%ers are legally considered inactive, so Canadian and American governments don't have to take any legal action against them. Ugh. I can't imagine how that happened, eh? Oh, how do you think it happened that this group of far-right neo-fascists became legally considered inactive, right? Yeah, I'm sure that just happened, right? So I suspect that support for the Conservatives are just going to keep declining, right? Because now they've hit a threshold that if they stay on this like threshold that they're at, which is about 25% support, they're going to start losing business support, right? Like corporations are going to go where the power goes, right? And they're not going to attach their star to a sinking ship. And if this ship starts sinking and it starts sinking in significant ways, they're not going to stick around. Like they're not going to funnel money into a dying system, into a dying party. They're going to funnel money into the party that they think is going to keep enriching them, and that's going to be the Liberals, right? So the Conservatives, I'll be very curious to see what their ad campaigns look like, dude. Like, what do they even run on? Like, what do they even say? Like, I do think that they're literally just going to stand up and just be like, Trudeau is a problem. And, like, I'm going to be on the left being like, yeah, Trudeau is a problem. That's why I'm voting NDP. Like, why would I ever vote Conservative? Seems insane to me. More than 1 billion marine animals may have died in BC heat wave. I think this is what you were talking about, Barnabas. Oh, my God. Oh, that sucks. 1 billion? Come on. That seems aggressive. Come on, it can't be a billion. Like, a researcher estimates more than 1 billion have died. Oh, yeah, if you're saying, like, mussels, clams, and starve... Yeah, then I see it. Yeah, they'd just be like... Mussels are like the toddler left in a parked car. They're completely at the mercy of the environment while the tide is out. Yeah. Just baked alive in their shells. Yikes, 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 yikes. Oh. Have a good one, Barnabas. Thanks for being here, bud. And there's another one coming, yeah. Well, yeah, like, this is just the beginning, right? Like, we're still yet to get into August. Like, August is another hot season. And the amount of, like... The amount of whinging, the amount of, like, obvious deflection I've seen on this. Like, I've seen articles out about the Lytton. Like, Lytton was a town that burned down. And I've seen headlines where they've been like, oh, people suspect that it might have been caused by a human. Like, a person actually started it. And then I actually, like, listened to the report. And you can tell that, like, all the people involved are like, yeah, that's what somebody over there said. Let's actually talk about something else, okay, guys? Because they don't believe it. Like, they don't think it's true. Like, who? Give me names. What's the report? Who's even saying this? Like, they don't say any of this shit. It's literally just gossip. It's just, like, total fucking bullshit. And even if it was the case that, like, let's say some teenager with, like, a pack of matches started a house fire, well, guess what? A house fire is not supposed to burn down a whole fucking town. You know what? You know what would happen? You know what does? An enormous heat wave that dries the whole place out, and so then you light one match and that burns the whole fucking place down. Yeah, it's pretty scary, man. That's scary shit. This is the one thing, like, like the sun is unrelenting. Like, it's not like it goes off. Like, it doesn't turn off, right? Like, it's gonna scour us off the face of the planet. If I wanted to talk to these Christian types about it, I'd be like, yeah, God said we'd no longer be wiped out by a flood. He didn't say anything about mass fires. Yeah, they were accusing all those forest fires in California on Antifa last year. What an embarrassment. What a fucking embarrassment. Like, just dorpy, dumb bullshit. Watching America decline into, like, overt, open fascism is just, it's tough. It's tough. It's going to be tough to watch, man. The next election cycle, because what I think is going to happen is that the midterm elections are going to happen and people are going to continue swinging Democrat, I think, because the Republicans are so far off the rails, and the Democrats are just going to show how fucking clueless and incompetent they are. or not clueless and incompetent, but how disinterested they are in actually helping anybody, right? Like, can you imagine if the Democrats get like even 2 more seats in the Senate? Can I marry you for a green card? I am in U.S. Sorry, Grace, this is recorded. I can't say yes. I can't do it. Yeah. I know, Grace. I know. Jeez, what a situation, man. And like, can you imagine another another Republican majority in the United States? What that's going to look like? Shit. Green leader Annamie Paul muted in virtual meeting as she argued against sweeping cuts to party staff. Annamie Paul is in trouble, man. She's in trouble. Well, and the Green Party needs to go socialist anyway. Like, they don't really have a reason to exist at this point. They're essentially just neoliberals. Like, they're not different than the Liberal Party at this point. The Liberals have adopted all of their platforms. I don't really see why the Green Party exists. Except to fill up the socialist position. That if they actually became a socialist party, then they make sense. Then I get it. And Annamie Paul won very threadbare. Her election was very, very thread. Like, that party could, and the second place person was a socialist. So like, I feel like if they oust Annamie Paul and elect a socialist, then I'll look at them and be like, okay, the Green Party makes sense again. I get why they're here. But yeah, every Republican, whenever the topic of Nazis comes up. The National Socialist Party was an extreme right political movement about jingoism, traditional white supremacy, and persecuting minorities. Socialist Party. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Forget about the fact that, like, Hitler took that party over and then completely destroyed it. Like, completely, like, removed any kind of socialist idea. And forget about the fact that Hitler was explicitly anti-Marxist, to the point where he was, like, talking about executing Marxists. Like, as big oil execs roam free, climate activist gets 8 years in prison. Oh, wow. There's a headline. There's a headline. Yikes. 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 Forget about the fact that the first concentration camp, Dachau, was built for communists. I didn't even know that, bud. Wow. It was explicitly built for Marxists, eh? To hold political prisoners, yeah. Located on the ground. After its opening by Heinrich Himmler. Ugh. Takeover. Concentration camp was opened with the arrival. 200 prisons. The first concentration camp for political prisoners. Yeah. Established by the party. I wonder if they stated explicitly, if they'll say it was, like, explicitly for Marxists. But, like, political prisoners, like, who's that? Like, I just wonder if they'll actually say it was to imprison Marxists explicitly. Oh, well. Wow. Yeah, right? Like, anybody who's standing up, this drives me crazy. There's, like, this new thing where people are saying, like, communism and fascism are the same. I'm like, then why did they fight so much? Like, why was Hitler so interested in getting rid of them? Like, if they're the same thing, right? Like, if they're the same, then why wouldn't Hitler just be like, oh, there's another organization that's the same as mine with the same goals, I'll ally with them. Like, why fight? Car runs into food truck. Worker falls into hot cooking oil. Business owner accuses driver of being drunk. Posts about it on Facebook. Then sets up a GoFundMe instead of, paying his employees, providing health insurance. What a horrific story. Oh, can you imagine falling into hot cooking oil? That's like how cartoon villains get created. That's like the original story of the Joker. That like the Joker fell into like a vat of chemicals. Like, oh my god. What a fucking story that is. Oh, go get it, buddy. Ugh. Bro, this is a different genocidal settler state, bro. This is not America. This is Canada, bro. Canada's more polite, bro. I swear. This is Canada, not America. Canada slaughtered the Cree and Mohawk people, bro, not the Chickasaw and Cherokee. This is Canada. They're different things, bro, please. New study indicates conspiracy theory believers have less developed critical thinking abilities. There's truth to this. There is truth to this. Because, like, my feeling is, as somebody who, like, genuinely in my life, I believed, heavily, into my early 20s, I still believed that Jesus Christ was coming back in a rapture event. I believed that. I would argue in favor of that. And effectively. I was very good at it. And I also believed in the 9/11 truther movement pretty heavily. And there is something about, like, if you can get a person to believe just one big lie, right? Like, if you can get them to believe just one big statement, one big lie, then you can be the most critical, most well-articulated, most thoughtful, well-educated person, but because all of your thinking is resting on this one enormous lie, then it's all for nothing, right? Then it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter how good you are at arguing. It doesn't matter how intelligent you are, even. It doesn't matter how good your critical thinking abilities are. None of that matters if you have this one foundational lie, right? Like, if you believe that you are a prophet sent by God, then it doesn't matter what you think or how you think or what you or how clever you actually are. If you believe that there is a magic book that God himself wrote, then it doesn't matter what else you believe. It doesn't matter, right? Like, everything is going to be fraudulent from there. If you believe that Elon Musk is going to save us by shooting a rocket at Mars, then it doesn't really matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter what kind of intelligence you have, right? Like, if you believe that billionaires can be good, then it doesn't really matter, right? Doesn't really matter. So, and a big thing about conspiracy theory is that once you believe one, it becomes easier to believe others. And there is, like, there is a desire in the kind of conspiracy brain to sort of connect all of these conspiracies together into one, like, uber conspiracy. And in the meantime, like, the truth is actually far more terrifying. Because conspiracy theorists generally want to believe that there's this, like, overarching control in place, which to a degree there is. Like, there's power centers, certainly. But the truth is much more terrifying, which is nobody's in control of this. Like, we're all just doing stuff and kind of hoping it works out. And the neoliberal capitalist position is, oh, just let chaos reign, let chaos decide, and it'll shake it all out, and you'll have these big, powerful actors operating within the chaos, and somehow that'll work out. Whereas the communist position is, we should probably at least talk about this and have a plan, right? We should probably at least sit down, talk amongst one another, come up with a plan, and then enact that plan, right? Like, and that's what's so funny about the conversation about, like, capitalism versus communism or any of this, is that it's been blown into this, like, weird abstract place when it's not that hard. Like, it's not that abstract, right? The theory isn't that difficult to understand. The capitalist position is let chaos reign, let powerful actors just act however they want, and somehow that'll come together with the invisible hand of the market, and all of this chaotic energy will create something good, we think. And that's the capitalist position. And the communist position is, what if we just talked about it and made a decision and then enacted that decision? It's the difference between chaos and order. It really is. And what's so funny is that the capitalists have deluded themselves and convinced themselves that they're the ones on the side of order. That's what's the funniest. And again, so if you've convinced yourself into believing that your system, which is based completely on chaos, is actually based on order, then you'll believe anything. Capitalism's the most innovative system in the world. Yeah, even though it's never innovated anything and created anything of value for anybody. Well, what about your smartphone? Yeah, you created your smartphone. No, you dumb shit. Our collective labor, as well as our government funding, created smartphones. Literally every time they pull that grift, it's so fucking embarrassing. Because it's literally, well, Bill Gates is a capitalist, and we have computers because of him. Literally, we funded computing for hundreds of, 100 years. We funded this, and then we privatized it so some guy could just put it in front of your face. Jesus fucking Christ. Yeah, sanctions are a crime against humanity, for sure. They're certainly a war crime. Yeah, capitalism doesn't create anything. Labor does. Well, and this is fundamentally what I'm talking about, that capitalists don't even understand their own system, right? They don't even understand their own system because they're illiterate. They've never actually read Marx. They've never actually done any of this kind of stuff. So they don't actually know how their own system works. And when you... and then you point this out, that labor creates all of this stuff. The capitalist is just the guy who takes all of the surplus value of that labor and keeps it for himself. That's all, right? And that if you got rid of the capitalist, that surplus value in labor would go to the people doing the work, presumably. Or at least it would go to a state enterprise that presumably would be set up to actually benefit the people. Instead, we just hoard it offshore and pretend that's fucking normal. Let chaos reign. That's the capitalist motto. Yeah, liberals maintain narrow lead over Tories amongst decided voters. It's not that narrow, dude. The last data I've seen, what data are they using? Oh, an online survey. Yeah, super trustworthy. Anyway. Stop voting liberal, stop voting conservative. No reason to keep that up. Robots were supposed to take our jobs. Instead, they're making them worse. Yeah, no shit. Trudeau signs agreement returning child welfare responsibilities to Cowes First Nations. Yeah, why is the state of Canada involved in child welfare, the child welfare of nations it has no jurisdiction over in the first place, right? That the more I think about it, the more I really do think that what Trudeau is scared of about investigating his own father's legacy in regards to the First Nations schools is that he's worried that he's going to find his dad was generally in favor of the project, but just his dad wanted to secularize it. That's what I would be concerned about if I was Justin Trudeau. I would be very, very concerned to find documents of my father saying, "Oh, the church is doing a botch-up job of this. We can do it better." That's what I would be concerned. Because that's one of the things that people have said to me, liberals have said to me about Pierre Elliott Trudeau, that the residential school system was shut down largely over Pierre Elliott Trudeau's period of time, which is true. So if that's the case, why wouldn't his son want to if if I knew my father went on like a crusade against the residential school system and tried to get rid of it, right? To be like, these residential schools are an abomination, and we need to shut these down, and we should do something to help these First Nations people, and we need to find reconciliation. Like, if that was the shit that his father was saying, then I would gladly show that off. I suspect that Trudeau is probably more aware that his father was probably saying, no, we could do this cheaper. We could secularize this. We could get the churches out of this. We could have the state continue this project, and that it would be less costly for us to do that, right? That's probably more likely what was going on. Because you got to remember, Pierre Elliott Trudeau watched his son, Justin Trudeau, come out on stage wearing blackface, singing Deo, and clapped along with everybody else in the room, right? There's definitely some racism at play here. There's definitely some racism at play. So, if you ever want to get a full-scale investigation, and this is why Justin Trudeau is doing all of these, like, on-the-side pandering stuff. You know, the way liberals do, right? That's why he's saying to the Catholic Church, the Catholic Church has to apologize, because it's free to do. It's a button you can press. Doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to actually embark in anything. You don't have to actually do anything, right? He signs an agreement returning child welfare responsibilities to Cows First Nations. Basically free to do, right? Looks good. It doesn't really cede any power or authority that's meaningful, right? So, like, but hey, how about an actual investigation? How about we actually dig in to all of these documents that we must have access to? Right? How about we actually take a look at the Hall of Records? How about we actually, like, go through and create a document that Canadians can look at, read, learn something from? That's not going to fucking happen. Justin Trudeau's not going to do that, right? Because he knows what he's going to find. He knows what he's going to find. He's going to find a lot of documents that make his dad look like a fucking asshole. He's not going to do it. And in a way, you can respect that, right? You can respect that, like, a son doesn't want to drag his own father's legacy through the coals. You can respect that. There is a just kind of, like, basic decency and dignity to that kind of thinking, but I don't give a shit about Trudeau's family. Like, I don't give a shit about his family or his family's legacy or any of that kind of shit. I want to know what the truth is. I want to know what the fuck happened. I want to know who said what and who did what. I want all the skeletons. I want all the skeletons out of the closet. I want us to line all the skeletons up, and I want us to take a look at them. And I want it to be like there and part of the Canadian experience, so that fucking idiots like Rex Murphy and Jordan Peterson can just sit down and shut the fuck up. So we could show them and be like, no systemic racism, eh, bud? No systemic racism whatsoever. I bet you anything that we'll find some, like, really, really vicious, brutal quote come out of Pierre Elliott Trudeau. I suspect that there's going to be something there that is just absolutely going to break these fucking liberals' hearts. I bet you anything. And we're never going to get it as long as Justin Trudeau is at the helm. Ugh. World Economic Forum's terrifying dystopic predictions for what they call the Great Reset. All products will have become services. I don't own anything. I don't own a car. I don't own a house. I don't own any appliances or any clothes, writes Danish MP Ida Auken. Shopping is a distant memory in this city of 2030, whose inhabitants have cracked clean energy and borrow what they need on demand. It sounds utopian until she mentions that her every move is tracked, and outside the city live swaths of discontents, the ultimate depiction of a society split in two. Yep. This Great Reset, man, I'm very scared of this. I'm scared that the oligarch class, that the sociopath class, sees it coming They know it's coming, and they're doing nothing to prevent it. Like, literally nothing. Like, they know it's going to happen. They know this climate change thing is going to be causing problems. They know all of this. And instead of actually doing anything about it, they're just going to fucking make us eat it. That's what they're going to do. They're just going to make us eat it. Yeah, BC government unveils hydrogen strategy. Good for you. That's actually pretty funny. What's this coming out of? Oh, this is like a different thing. You know what? I still love it. Doctor, time to test your reflexes. Me, dodges little knee hammer. The doctor. It's pretty good reflexes, though. Like, if you manage to, like, get your knee out of the way. Okay, I only got, like, 10 minutes left. The chat seems pretty quiet. So I am going to spend the last little bit of this looking at pictures of capybara. I love these guys. These guys, like, this here is my spirit animal, without a doubt. If any of you are confused about who, like, if I were to come back as any animal, it would be one of these capybara. They seem to just be, like, completely chill. They seem to be peaceful creatures who make friends with, like, literally every other creature. There's this really wonderful story of how a pair of capybara escaped from the Toronto City Zoo, and they were just chilling out in the park where the zoo is, presumably. We don't actually know where they went because we couldn't find them. And once it started to get cold, as it does in Canada, they just went back to the zoo. So it was really like they were like, okay, guys, like, thanks for the zoo experience, but it's nice, so I'm gonna go chill out somewhere else. Gets cold again, and they're just like, oh, hey, guys, you got some shelter here. I was able to be here before. Can I come back? And we were like, yes, you slippery little devils. Imagine these things escaping from the zoo. Oh, that's a great question. I think Australia, but I don't know. Let's find out. What a great question. Oh, South America. Look at that. They're in Brazil. Brazil, it looks like, mainly. Where is that? So, like, yeah, Brazil. Are they up in Venezuela? Yeah, Venezuela, Peru, all these kind of places. Looks like they got a little bit everywhere, but it's South America mainly. That makes it even better. Where they're like, they're in captivity, and they're like, no, we shall be free. Somebody on this chat asked if I would watch, I forget the name of it all of a sudden, but it was a documentary on Brazilian politics. And I watched it yesterday. Shoot, I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of it. And it does a really good job of capturing what happened in Brazil with Lulu. Lulu? Oh man, I'm really embarrassing myself. But so a socialist gets in Brazil, but he needs to, which is Lulu, and Lulu manages to become the leader of Brazil for a little while, but he doesn't get like overwhelming power, so he has to create alliances with the business community in order to even really do anything in Brazil. And he does a lot of really great stuff, like lots of improvements, like socialism works, right? And then he retires, because, you know, one retires, and then his successor, Dilma, is essentially ousted in a coup because they a whole bunch of bullshit, economic failure happens in Brazil, as it did throughout the whole world. And so they use this as an excuse to oust her in like a legislative coup, basically. And of course, she was saying, none of the stuff you're accusing me of is true. But it didn't matter that the business community essentially ousted her in this legislative coup and put in Bolsonaro. And that's how Bolsonaro came to power in Brazil, is through this coup. And an interesting thing that I didn't know about Brazilian politics is that they inherited their system, right, from the Spanish conquistadors, right? That Spain came over, wiped out the civilizations all through here, established their own system, and the Brazilians essentially adopted that system, right? And so you got to remember, right, the inquisitors were part of that system. And so the way it works in Brazil is that their judges are also their prosecutors, right? So if you are a prosecutor in Brazil, you are going after somebody, building the case to prosecute them, and then once it goes to trial, you turn around and become the judge. What? So that's a problem. Like, that's a problem. That their prosecutors are also their judges. Like, that's a problem. You want your judges to be impartial. You want your judges to be hearing the case. Yes, exactly, Grace. Ugh. You want your judges to be impartial. You want them to be sitting there like the noble capybara, right? Just chilled out, listening, hearing facts, right? Like the noble capybara. and then making a decision based on that. And you have a prosecutor whose job is to be the prosecutor, and a defender whose job is to be the defender. And then from there, you kind of suss out the middle ground. That's a more effective way to run your ship. But here in Brazil, nope. Prosecutors are judges. Because the Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. And so now, but what's fascinating is that now new evidence has come out that has exonerated not only Dilma but also Lulu, right? And so so Lulu is going to run again in his old age now, and he's quite old. But now that they've experienced this coup, this rise of fascism in Brazil, as well as the austerity that has come with it, the Brazilians are feeling hungry, and it would be really cool to see like a sweep. Because that's what happened in Chile. In Chile, there was like a full-scale sweep. Like, you cannot be a neoliberal capitalist in Chilean politics. You just can't. You won't be elected. And the front runner for the upcoming election in Chile, the front runner is actually a communist. So, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. How about that? The noble capybara brought us to Brazilian politics. It would be so amazing and powerful if Brazil became elected like socialist leadership, especially at this moment where you've got like Peru, Bolivia, Chile, Venezuela, Colombia is fighting against their fascists very, very desperately at the moment. I don't know actually anything about Argentina. Yep, the noble and gentle capybara bringing peace to the world. One tiny, weird little snout at a time. It'd be so nice. Ooh, I love etymology. The common name is from Tupi. So, which is one who eats slender leaves, or grass eater. Isn't that great? The scientific name comes from the Greek hydro. Water pig. I love it. So literally, you either call it grass eater or it's a water pig. That's hilarious. Oh, yeah, you're right, dude. It won't mean anything. The U.S. will just coup Chile once again. But that's what's interesting, is that like, the United States is losing military power because fundamentally all power comes from the people. And there has been a significant decline in military enrollment in the United States. I shouldn't say that without actually backing that up. United States military enrollment. So reaching military age annually, active personnel. So that's the amount of active personnel they have, right? That actually ranks them third in the world, okay? Like, really, really think about that. Like, they don't actually have that much active military personnel. To put this, let's, I wonder if I can actually find a list of active military personnel. That the active personnel, like the American military is actually, its strength is its technology, right? Its technology is what has done it. Can I arrange this? So take a look here. So China has 2 million. India has more, right? North Korea has almost as much as the United States, right? Russia, Pakistan, Iran, South Korea, like these are not, that's not insignificant. And the reason why that's important to point out, it's not to say that if the United States took its military and jammed it into Chile that it would be effective, but the United States has a lot of shit going on, man. The United States has a lot of shit going on. It's got the Afghanistan war, the Iraq war, the Syrian war. It's maintaining Saudi Arabia, like the invasion of Saudi Arabia. It's trying to build up against the Chinese military, while simultaneously you're telling me that they're going to go in here and also start causing coups and all that kind of shit. They just don't have the manpower, man. They just don't have the manpower. Like, what about space war? Yeah, I just, like, that's not really legit. Like, any kind of space force that is being built is actually being built to protect the world from, like, asteroids and shit. Like, that's what they're actually focusing on. And like, space war? Like, ugh. Yeah, they could supply shelter, monetarily fund, arm, chill, like the classics. You're right about that. But again, like, they only have so many resources. And their resources are getting more and more spread thin. Like, you're talking about a culture that's about to go through, like, a Soviet Union style collapse, right? Like, that they're already going in that direction. And the idea, like, don't get me wrong, they'll try, but the idea that they're going to be successful doing this, how about, here, I could just Chile. So Chile itself has a standing army of 77,000 people, right? That's not zero, dude. Like, that's not nothing. And, like, you can, you gotta pay for the bombs that you're dropping, right? Like, you gotta, I just don't see right now today how realistic space war actually is. Like, what are we realistically expecting to see? From some kind of, like, a space laser? Is that what we're talking about? Like, what are we legitimately talking about with some kind of space-based conflict, right? Oh, wow, here's good old Canada. Blame Canada. Blame Canada. Yeah, like, I just don't think the United States really has the military, the alien threat. If there are aliens, it's quite telling that they're showing up mainly in the United States. Most of the UFO sightings that have occurred in the last 15, 20 years have been all around the United States. The rest of the world, they're just not seeing them. They're just not seeing them. And it's not like the Chinese don't have the capability or the Russians don't have the capability. This is a very North American phenomenon. So either the CIA is bullshitting us, or the UFOs are mainly interested in these fucking crazy nut jobs. Anyway, this is a conversation topic for tomorrow. Thanks for being here, guys. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to talk to you guys. Please, Grace, show up tomorrow. Let's do aliens tomorrow, Grace. Come on in, and we'll dive right down. Let's go. I'm all about this. I will absolutely talk aliens with you, man. I absolutely will do that. I love this topic of conversation. Are you kidding me? I was a 9/11 truther. I was like a big well, and thank you for being here. Let's have some fun tomorrow. Oh, you guys are great. You're wonderful. Do not let these capitalists gaslight you. Do not let these capitalists gaslight you. They will gaslight the shit out of you. You are a divine being, standing in divine energy. Do not let anybody tell you differently. Good luck. We're going to need it.